Pursuant to the state constitution and legislative law, the fiscal committees of the state legislature are authorized to hold hearings on the executive budget proposal. Today's hearing will be limited, or this afternoon's hearing will be limited to a discussion of the governor's proposed budget for economic development. Following each presentation, there will be some time allowed for questions from the chairs of the fiscal committees and the other legislators. As far as the Senate is concerned, I'm John DeFrancisco. I'm present along with the ranker on the committee, Senator Krueger and Senator Little, and more will be coming in and out as we go forward.
I've been joined by Assemblyman Schimminger, Assemblywoman Dee Barrett, Assemblyman Michelle Solage, and Al Stripey, and Mr. Weprin.
Thank you. We're also joined by Assemblyman Walter and Assemblyman Garbarino.
And the first witness is Kenneth Adams, Commissioner of the New York State Department of Economic Development for about another week, I think. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Chairman DeFrancisco, Chairman Farrell, and distinguished members of the Senate and Assembly, good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss Governor Cuomo's 2015-2016 executive budget for Empire State Development, or ESD. This year's budget continues the fiscal responsibility the governor's administration has prioritized in years past while doubling down on the strategies that are working to help keep the New York economy growing. Between cutting small business taxes, investing in our infrastructure, focusing on upstate New York's economic development like never before, and linking higher education and industry through Startup New York, among other initiatives, the economic opportunity is being restored and is growing for New Yorkers all across the state. The governor recently outlined his bold and comprehensive opportunity agenda. And as a part of his plan and the economic development budget, the governor announced round 5 of the Regional Economic Development Council competition. This would include $150 million in new capital funding and $70 million in state tax credits to support regional priority projects. Since the regional councils were launched, the state has awarded more than $2.9 billion in economic and community development funding through the CFA and the regional council process. This has resulted in commitments of 150,000 new or retained jobs in New York. In conjunction with the 5th round of the regional councils, the governor has also proposed launching a new competitive $1.5 billion upstate revitalization fund, which will replicate the successful Buffalo Billion initiative to help further upstate New York's economic recovery. This is an opportunity for our upstate regions to infuse millions of dollars into their economies and support projects that will strengthen critical infrastructure, revitalize communities, grow tourism, and bolster workforce development region-wide. Startup New York encourages businesses to take advantage of the research and development, academic programming, and job training initiatives that are part of the state's college campuses. To date, there are 73 businesses participating in Startup New York, representing commitments to create more than 2,400 new jobs and invest more than $104 million in our communities. The governor has also proposed creating a tax-free Startup New York zone at Stewart International Airport in the Mid-Hudson region and at Republic Airport on Long Island. The New York State Innovation Venture Capital Fund was established to provide critical seed and early-stage funding to incentivize new business growth in New York State. The ESD board recently approved funding for the first 3 investment firms upstate. Governor Cuomo proposes expanding the program and doubling the fund to $100 million. The additional funding would complement the other significant innovation initiatives undertaken by the governor, and a portion of investments will be in companies that are associated with Startup New York, the Innovation Hotspots program, and the proposed Regional Economic Development Cluster program. To continue our support of small business, the governor will host a small business summit and create the New York Business Express, a one-stop shop housed at ESD. This, along with the appointment of a New York State Chief Small Business Officer, will help cut red tape and make starting and growing small businesses in New York State easier. ESD's Division of Minority and Women Business Development has also made important improvements and announced this year a record of more than 25% MWBE utilization statewide. To build on this momentum, the governor increased the statewide goal to 30%, the highest of any state in the country. The executive budget includes funding to support new staff and other costs to help meet this expanded MWBE participation goal. In this year's budget, the governor's included a $45 million commitment for initiatives to continue to grow the state's tourism industry. In 2014, data shows the number of visitors to New York is estimated to have increased by 4% from 2013, the prior year. This is projected to have generated direct spending of $62 billion, producing an estimated $7.8 billion in state and local taxes. In addition, as the fourth largest employment sector in New York, the tourism industry added 22,000 jobs for an average of 852,000 jobs at this point, generating more than $18.5 billion in wages. We're also looking to increase promotion of our New York business, of our New York business opportunities abroad. In the executive budget, a new $35 million Global New York Development Program will encourage more New York-based companies to export their products and services to established and emerging markets around the globe. Global New York will provide grants and loans to help small and medium-sized businesses explore new exporting opportunities for global expansion. Another critical component of connecting our region to these global commerce activities and ensuring economic sustainability for our state is the expansion of broadband. Building on New York's previous broadband commitments, this year the governor calls for a $1 billion investment, $500 million in the new New York broadband program, to incentivize and leverage private sector funding to ensure that every New Yorker has access to high-speed internet by 2019. Now, this would represent the largest state investment in universal high-speed broadband deployment in the country. In closing, it's been an exciting and busy start to the new year, and ESD has a lot of work ahead. The governor's agenda builds on the accomplishments we have made since 2011 to make New York State the place to do business, and furthers ESD's mission to promote a vigorous and growing state economy and encourage business investment and job creation. We look forward to these new opportunities and to working together with you, our legislative partners, to move our economy forward. Thank you again for this opportunity to testify this afternoon. I am happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Senator Little.
Thank you very much, and thanks for being here, and thanks for the work that you have done. One of the things I did want to ask in regard to the governor's budget, you and the governor have been very interested and played a big role in the Clarkson-Trudeau partnership, which, for those, Trudeau is a research center in Saranac Lake, world-renowned, and Clarkson University is in St. Lawrence County, right nearby, and working together. However, I saw that the allocation last year was $10 million, and this year it's down to $5 million. Hopefully that was an error.
Senator, our commitment, and you're absolutely right about the governor's commitment to the Trudeau-Clarkson partnership, and it is a multi-year $35 million commitment. And what we have worked out with both Clarkson and Trudeau is a multi-year payment plan, and this year the $5 million is the amount that's needed. It will be followed up in subsequent years to complete the whole program over time.
So it hasn't affected the total amount at all?
No, it hasn't.
All right, thank you. And the second one is on the minority and women-owned business thing. In your remarks, you talked about how we have the statewide goal of 25% has been achieved, and now looking towards a 30%. But that is a statewide goal, and I have people who have been awarded through their Regional Economic Development Council in Tupper Lake, the Wild Center. They had an award, and then they were told that they had to have 23% minority and women-owned business contracts. 13% had to be with minority companies, and 10% had to be with women. And in Tupper Lake, very difficult to find either of those minority and women-owned businesses. They had to go to Syracuse. So whereas they are still doing the project and all, their contractors have to be from a much larger area. So I think that's a concern that needs to be addressed, that it's a goal. It's not a requirement, correct?
That's correct. It is a goal, and the good news is certainly that in 2011, at the beginning of the governor's first term, we were at about 11% MWB procurement statewide. And in this, short period of time, we reached his goal, the goal he proposed. Again, a goal, as you say, of 25%, and then he's raised it again to 30. But as you note, there are different levels of what we call availability, of certified MWBE firms to bid on contracts depending on where you are in the state. It's regional, it's economic, and the idea is to, on average, reach that goal, project by project, to do what we would call a reasonable negotiation
Right.
based on what is available locally. So I will look into that for you, but you're absolutely right in your observation.
Okay, and certainly, it's a good idea to encourage that in order to achieve the goal every place in the state, but I think that making that a requirement makes it extremely difficult for certain areas, especially my area. So thank you very much, and again, thanks for all you've done in your work with ESD. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. We've been joined by Mr. Steele, Mrs. Jassy, Mr. Brown, Ms. Bichette, and to speak, Mr. Schimminger.
We've been joined by Diane Savino.
And Nicole Malliotakis.
Thank you for calling upon me to speak, but I will ask questions, too. A long time ago, Commissioner Adams, our state's Department of Economic Development arrived at a system of 10 different regions, right? And those 10 regions have endured into the future. Those 10 different regions were used as the basis for the regional economic development councils, which were willed into existence by the governor. The 10 regions are not equal in size or population or wealth, but they continue to be the basis for a lot of things which your agency does and which are initiatives that come from the executive branch. I come from a place, as you know, called Buffalo, and several years ago, people in Buffalo and the surrounding area were very happy that the governor determined to commit to $1 billion for Buffalo. It was actually for the region, although most of it is going into Buffalo. And the process by which he funded that billion was a multi-year process, smaller amount initially, smaller amount later. Third year, big amount, has completed the budgeting of the billion. Now there's a new program which you referenced in your testimony, which is being proposed by the governor, which is the $1.5 billion Upstate Revitalization Fund, which you said will replicate the successful Buffalo Billion program. Let me start by asking this. The Buffalo Billion program was a long time in gestation and in development. Over a year, I think, was spent by an out-of-town consultant named McKinsey to develop a plan. The $1.5 billion Upstate Revitalization Fund proposal will have a very, very, very short time frame. I think the proposal would begin to be implemented April 15th, and the submissions would be due 2.5 months later. So do you feel that the competitors will have enough time to develop as good a plan as the Buffalo folks developed over a 1-year plus period?
I think they will, because they're not starting from zero, as we did in 2011 when we designed the Regional Council Initiative, and even the Buffalo Billion shortly thereafter. We were starting, right out of the gate, if you will. The 7 regions that are now going to be asked to compete in this proposed Upstate Revitalization Fund, those 7 regions, those 7 regional councils have plans that they've done going back to 2011. They did, each one of the 10 regions did its long-term economic development plan. And probably more importantly, the members of those regional councils have been working together for 4 years. Some people have come on and added more expertise. They've modified their plans as needed, and they've had 4 cycles of advancing priority projects and thinking about their economic future. Again, this is for all 10 regions, but thinking for a second about the 7 that will compete for the $1.5 billion. And so they're starting from a very powerful base of knowledge, of plans, and of work already done. Indeed, we'll have to provide additional support there so that we use McKinsey, as you pointed out earlier, but technical support so they can do thoughtful plans. but there's a there. There's a body of work, and they have their economic development directions pretty well established. So I think that's going to help them prepare their responses that, as you say, are due on July 1st. And again, as the proposal outlines, 3 of those 7 will emerge as winners in the competition to receive an allocation of $500 million each. Again, an allocation that's not spent in this fiscal year per se. Just like the Buffalo Billion, it can be laid out or paid out as the projects require.
When the governor came up with the $1 billion for Buffalo, that was based on something. I think it was based on a perception of a need, and I think it was also based upon seeing the good work that was being done by Howard Zemsky's and Satish Tripathi's Western New York Regional Economic Development Council. So he perceived something. Might he not, right now, already be able to perceive something going on in 3 of the 7 remaining upstate regions and obviate the need for a contest?
Well, what we've seen over the last 4 years in the regional council system is that the competitive nature of it does get people to put in extra time, extra energy, extra thinking, and we get really good projects, plans as a result of the competition. People step up because it's competitive, and I think what that lesson is applied to the new competition here.
Of the 10 regions, 3 of them are automatically not going to compete. Long Island, City of New York, and the Western region.
Right.
Of the 7 that will compete, the majority of them, 4, will end up being losers. There are people in this hall right now from those 4 regions. They don't know it yet, but they're going to be in that category if this competition goes forward. Does it make more sense, perhaps, to simply take what you know now, areas of need which may not be consistent with the boundaries of a region, but maybe in a particular place within a region, and a particular project that you know of now, and move ahead with funding those deserving transformational good projects, sans without a contest?
There's an important balance between the new initiative and the ongoing nature of the regional councils themselves, right? So the budget, as I mentioned in my testimony, also proposes a refunding at the current or last year's level of the general annual regional council competition through the CFA process. So that's been about, let's say, $700 to $750 million each year, a large portion of which is the ESD resources you see here. So point is, for the 4 regions, actually for all 10, yes, a subset will emerge in this Upstate Revitalization Fund competition, but all will have the access they've always had every year to all of the support and resources for their priority projects and for new projects in the regional council system. So both are going to happen. And I think that balance should work out, and it means that there will be resources across the state.
Let me shift gears just for a moment.
The moment is up.
The moment's up. I'll come back later then.
Senator?
Senator Savino.
Thank you, Senator DeFrancisco. Good afternoon, Ken. Good to see you. I just want to ask you, there's a piece in today's Cranes about Startup New York, and it talks about the success of the program upstate and not so successful downstate in the city, that out of the 73 companies that are participating, only 7 of them are downstate, and it lists some of the, obviously, it's expensive to do business in New York City. What can we do, though, to improve the likelihood that companies who could be interested in coming to New York City, you know, our new Silicon Alley, how do we get them there? What can we do to use Startup New York in a way that we're currently not doing?
It's a good question, and I think that we're going to see, you know, over time, more and more companies in New York City, including Staten Island, taking advantage of the program. If you think about the 7 that are there now, they're all actually concentrated at BioBat, at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, which was an existing facility with a SUNY affiliation, SUNY Downstate, and they just, out of the gate, they hit the ground running, to their credit. And I mean, this is a good thing, and there's 7 companies there. We have some constraints, some of this is in the law, and we're working with it, around identifying locations in the ever-challenging real estate market of New York City. Land is very expensive. You don't, abandoned buildings these days are pretty hard to come by if you're a school. So we have to get over those constraints. We do have good news in that we recently certified space plans for Bronx Community College, for York. Medgar Evers in Brooklyn will be certified in the coming weeks. They've got a great plan to do something at the Navy Yard. So it has been slower in the city. There are constraints on the space, but the CUNY system is our partner, and they're doing a good job, as are the other intermediaries, economic development groups that are helping us. So it has been slower. It represents 10%, the 7 of the 73. And we'd be happy to work with you more on how to do that. We've got to get the word out, and we've got to work with those schools, especially in the CUNY system, to recruit more companies.
I noticed one of the concerns about the tech industry, I have a girlfriend who makes a fortune as a network engineer. I don't even, she speaks like computer language, I don't know what she's talking about. But her career has gone from company to company to company. They raid, I shouldn't say the word raid, but if you're talented in this industry, people want to hire you. And so you see professionals in the high-tech industry who are moving, and they have, multiple, employers on their resume. That seems to be a problem with Startup New York. Apparently, you're not allowed to do that. Would we have to change the law to allow for that kind of movement among some of these companies? Because I think that's a deterrent to some of our tech companies from participating in the program.
Well, the control in the law is that we can't give a break on somebody's income taxes if they're already paying those income taxes. It's really for a net new job. So, and again, as the name suggests, for startups. So it would be tricky for your friend to just go into a startup company and have her, income tax liability go away. The idea is that these are actually brand new companies hiring people for the first time, many of them right out of school, for example, who may not be taxpayers, or that they're companies coming in from out of state. In fact, one of the companies that buy a bed in Brooklyn is from California. They make basically synthetic skin and leather and things like that, animal stuff. I mean, they're a California firm, outside jobs coming in. So that's really the goal. The goal, in fact, the law prevents us, as it should, from granting tax benefits for someone who might be, quote unquote, moving across the street. No, it's just startups, new companies, new investment, and the only type of job that can receive the tax break is an absolutely, as we call it, a net new job to the state.
And one other question on the Regional Economic Development Councils. When we lost the ability to deliver discretionary funding to our districts, it was a problem for many of the organizations that depended on, discretionary funding from members. Some of them obviously would not be eligible for consideration by the Regional Economic Development Council, but some of them are. One of the frustrations I know I have, and some of my colleagues do, is that we have no idea what you guys are doing with these Regional Economic Development Councils. We don't know who's eligible. We don't know how to advise groups in our communities that potentially could be eligible. What's the best way to put their best foot forward so they can secure some of this funding? So it's been a couple of years now, and I've asked this more than once, and I still don't have a clear understanding of how I should advise qualified organizations or programs in my area, in either Staten Island or South Brooklyn, as to how to access some of this funding.
The best thing that they can do is obviously contact us, our ESD, New York City office, anytime. Even the CFA deadline tends to be in June, but hold off on that for a while, and let us work with them. This has come up, and I do work with my staff, and I work with organizations who are trying to navigate the process. What we will do this spring, we've done it in the past, is hold public workshops in the city's case, on CUNY campuses around the city in the spring that are free, obviously, and open to the public, where we walk you through the process. And we've had some of those in the past that I've gone to, and they're pretty good attendance. We've got to get the word out, need to work with you, make sure your constituents, these groups, know when we're doing those workshops, and they can come and see the whole CFA process and how it works. We've also tried to make the website, all this is an online process. We get about 3,000 applications every June when the deadline hits. Tried to make that more user-friendly, better help functions and search functions, but it's not enough to direct somebody to a website. We'd be happy to work with any groups in your district and see if they fit. Not all of them may. Again, what has happened in this system is it's about economic development. So if there are groups that are working on, supporting private sector investment, job training, job creation, economic development, new jobs for Staten Islanders, we could try to we would be obligated to find a way to get them into the system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've been joined by Kimberly Jean Pierre. And next to question, Ms. Bishop.
We've also been joined by Senator Simcha Felder.
And Assemblyman Joe Saladino.
Hello. Hello, Commissioner. Thank you for being here today with us. I have a question around the minority and women business-owned enterprise, and I have a few questions around that topic. First, I'm fully aware that the Minority and Women-Owned Business Development and then programs, what it does, it provides financial and technical assistance to minority and women business-owned enterprise. And there's been a base funding level of about $635,000 for this program in the past. We are fully aware that also historically, MWBEs have strived for 20% in terms of a goal. And now there's an increase of that threshold for 30%, okay? That's a very high threshold. What is the approach, if any, of the Empire State Development using in order to increase the number of MWBEs by 30% or higher? That's the first question. You can answer that question first.
You know, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, just the very end of it?
Sure, sure.
I heard you were talking about the 30% goal, but I'm sorry, I didn't understand the
Right,
question.
so my question is, what is the approach that the Empire State Development will use in order to
Right.
attain or reach that goal of 30%?
Great, thank you. You know, the goal is a statewide goal for all of the state agencies that are under basically the umbrella of Executive Order 15A. There are 96 of them, ESD is but one. But we have this core responsibility to support all those 95 other state agencies in their efforts to reach this goal, so that at the end of the day, the average hits 30% or better. And so we do three things. We do, and this is how I'll answer your question, we do the certification of firms as New York State certified MWBE firms. We certified over 1,000 new firms last year. We've got more. This is an ongoing challenge to get as many firms to participate and get certified as we can. Then you have this baseline of support that gets back to Senator Little's question of making sure there are actually enough firms to do the work all across the state. The second thing we do is what we'll call kind of business development. It's not enough to get a firm certified. That's kind of like getting a license. If you have a car, it doesn't make a difference, right? So once you get a firm certified, you got to get them work. We have an e-alert system. They put their NAICS codes in a computer database. When a state agency has a contract, they're automatically notified of that availability. We have to constantly make sure we're getting them all the information about state procurements, could be for commodities, services, goods, across those 96 agencies. We want to be blitzing whatever it is, their phone, their laptop, their desktop, every day with email saying, here are opportunities, here are contracts, are you interested in bidding on them? So that's the second part of what we do. You got to help people get the work, get the procurements. The third, we call agency services. We're the support function for all of those state agencies trying to reach this goal. Some of them haven't, for whatever reason, in the past, been that successful at this type of procurement. But you see, under the governor's leadership, this is economic development. I mean, these are, under the law, small and mid-sized companies, privately held, many of them startups, many of them historically with difficult access to these opportunities. And so what we're doing is giving them, for a period of time, access to these state contracts, over $2 billion worth last year, so they can grow their businesses and ultimately actually grow out of the system when they become larger firms. So we do all three of those things. And to answer your question about next year, to hit that goal, we're going to have to do all three of those things even more intensely. Work with our sister agencies, our other agencies across the state system. Make sure certified firms are getting access to contracts. We provide financial support and bonding support. We have a surety bond assistance program, so we can provide surety bonds for people to get construction contracts. We have another new lending program because a lot of small firms, when they get a contract, have to go buy stuff it's true of any business, to actually comply with the contract. Well, we can help finance that now. So we have a number of tools at our disposal, and the governor's also proposed in the budget, I didn't mention it in my testimony, but an increase in administrative funding so we can do this work, and we frankly need that support to hire a few more people to catch up with the certification and provide these firms with the support they need.
Thank you. And I applaud the governor and yourself for recognizing that we do need more money to administer this whole process. But the issue is, and it has been for a very long time, we have, it says 8.8 thousand MWBE certified businesses. How many of them are actually getting jobs or contracts? That's the problem. We need to see a level of transparency behind that. What is the demographic breakdown of that? You know, how big are these companies? What regions are they? Are they minority-owned? Are they women-owned? Are they Asian-owned? Whatever. So I know you may not have the answer now to these questions, but that's something that would really help reach our goals in identifying where's the gap. We need to know we need to know how many of these businesses are getting contracts, and if it's only 5, that makes up the 20%. We need to do work,
Right.
a lot of work, to get more participation.
Yeah, no, thank you. There is again, last year, over $2 billion of contracting. I'm not going to say that's enough. I don't think the governor would either, but it's so much more than it was 4 years ago, so we are making progress. We've also centralized a lot of the information you're speaking of, which is really important, on a new central kind of reporting system and database that we built that's statewide, so we can get that information for you. Be happy to do that.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator.
Good afternoon. Startup New York, there was a report due the end of December. That's been delayed till April 1st. But I believe that I heard the governor say 1,900 jobs have been created by Startup New York so far. Can you confirm that? Or tell me how many jobs have been created by Startup New York?
2,400 jobs have been committed to by the 73 companies that have been accepted into the program. So it's a slight update from the last numbers the governor may have mentioned, but it's 2,400 jobs.
So 78 companies,
73 companies,
73.
2,400 jobs, and a little over $104 million of company investment, of private investment.
And can you provide, perhaps not the second, but can you provide our committee's list of these companies?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so those are, again, new companies operating within New York State, new jobs.
The jobs, the 2,400 jobs, and it's a requirement of the law, and we check it carefully, are new jobs. The companies, interestingly, fall into several categories. So of the 73 companies accepted into the program, 16, 11 plus 5, 16 are from out of state. 11 are from other states. We have companies from California and Massachusetts and Connecticut that have come into the program. 5 are from overseas, company from Denmark, and so on. The other set of 37 are expansions of existing companies. So that's a New York State company that was going to expand its operations potentially elsewhere, outside the state, but then decided instead to do its expansion in partnership with one of our schools in the program, 73 schools in the program, and do it in one of these startup sites with a college. So you have expansions, and you have companies coming in, and then, of course, you have the actual startups themselves, companies that are brand new, as I mentioned earlier, that roll out of the innovation, the discovery, the science and technology of the sponsoring school.
So that would be approximately 17 brand new. So you said 73, 37 are expansion of New York State, 16 came in from out of state or out of the country.
I think
So
your
the
math
remaining
is better than mine, Senator, but yeah, that's about right.
The governor's proposed wanting to expand Startup New York to other locations, or I believe airports. Have we maxed out of the available space that was in the original program?
We have, in the original program, there was a provision for underutilized state facilities, state-owned property, if a college or a university had the need or had the programmatic kind of connection to that space. And in the case of Republic Airport in Farmingdale and Stewart Airport near Kingston, Both of those, it turns out, are regional airports you're all familiar with, but the land under those airports is owned by state DOT. Port Authority operates Stewart Airport, but the dirt is state DOT. Likewise, at Republic, that's actually operated by state DOT. And we are very interested in trying to attract more businesses related to aviation and trade and the technology in aviation and other airport-like, and let's call it logistics, activities. It's a big part of the state's economy to begin with, and those were perceived to be, in effect, underutilized assets. There's a lot of land at Stewart that is not fully utilized. There's an industrial park there controlled locally, which has empty buildings, empty land. And likewise, at Farmingdale, it was perceived that there are opportunities to have more economic investment there. And we have colleges that are, most importantly here, in both cases, there are colleges and universities that want to do this. And so we're reviewing their applications to see how they would connect their academic mission with aviation and logistics and these other industries.
So 2,400 jobs from Startup New York and 2013 ESDC performance measures, job data by region, all your other programs in total in 2013 added up to, just reading statistics here, jobs created 2,424. So all the other programs, which in the previous year, because I'm assuming that 2,400 was for 2014?
Actually, no.
The Startup New York jobs?
No, I need to pause, if you'll let me.
Sure.
Maybe, my sense is you may be looking at a report issued by the Comptroller's Office last week, because I'm familiar with those numbers that you just cited, and I think that's where it came from. And if that's correct, then let me just sort of pause to talk about that, because I am concerned for all of us this afternoon that there is some information in the Comptroller's report that's misleading and could make this discussion a little more complicated. The bottom line is the Comptroller's report that came out last week, which I suspect most of you have seen, it's garnered some press attention, is only a partial picture of what we do at ESD. I'll explain that in a second, but it means that the report is basically, it's flawed and it's misleading. Because, again, as a partial view, and actually they explain in their notes, it's not a report, it's a profile of an agency based on the Paris system. Under the Authorities Budget Act, as you know, there's a reporting requirement that certain data go into Paris, which is an online system, public authority information system. And so we do that, as we are required to do. The problem is it only picks up a portion of what we do as an agency. And so again, the Comptroller's report is based on limited kind of partial information, like the jobs data you cited. I can give you all, just to take this issue, and if you don't mind, I'll just give some examples of how this becomes misleading. The report says we have 168 subsidiaries at ESD. I suspect you saw that, Senator. I did too. I tripped over that number because we have 13. We reported on them to the Senate as we're required in December under law, issued that report and described our 13 subsidiaries. The report says we have something like $10.4 billion in outstanding debt. Fully $7 billion of that debt was issued by prior administrations. Sure, it's on our books as a liability, it has to be. But in other words, these things aren't fully explained in the report. The report to the jobs issue that you raised, Senator, that number does not include any of the jobs created, or retainer created by any of our tax credit programs. There's a little line buried in the report, which, believe me, I looked at over the weekend, where they appropriately admit that their limited view does not consider any ESD activity related to our tax credit programs. Well, our largest economic development tools are tax credits. So the jobs that they have incentivized aren't counted in the report. So, to wit, it's really 14,000 jobs in 2013 if you include created and retained. That's what the report would suggest. Just last year, 2014, we did 394 incentive offers to companies. This wouldn't be in the report, but it's to give you an example of how the data, 2014. 394 projects requiring the allocation of $525 million, mostly of the Excelsior tax credit, for the retention and creation of 75,000 jobs. 75,000 jobs. So you have 14,000 jobs over here, 75, it depends how you count it. And again, this is the flaw in the report. It's a partial view. It is akin to, if you wanted to sort of judge the performance of a car looking in the trunk or the glove compartment instead of under the hood, it misses the story. So with that in mind, again, I welcome any questions about the report, but I just apologize. It's hard to work off of it because it is misleading and only has that partial picture.
I'll be having a second round, but I would suggest, no, this was only, the third round? I would suggest that if you knew about the controller's report, it might have been useful to put numbers in your testimony today to give us your position on.
Well, thank you for that. As you know, came out last week, and it caught me by surprise. They did not contact us. They just pulled them up. They pulled the information out of a report and printed a report, and had they contacted us, we would have worked with them to get the full story.
We have to keep going. Assembly?
Thank you. Assemblyman Barron, and we've been joined by Assemblyman Colton.
Thank you. Not on? Hello, testing. Oh, thank you. I'm always concerned about these regional economic development councils. I don't appreciate the prior two governors, including this governor, taking money from the assembly in terms of its member items and then put them in the guise of these economic development councils so he can control the funding. And the reason why I have major concerns, because when I look at East New York or Harlem or Bedford-Stuyvesant and some of the communities that are economically depressed, and then we're always told we don't have the capacity and our groups don't receive the technical assistance to gain the capacity to apply for some of these grants and this money. So I'm always concerned and suspicious when you can put money into a concept that takes money away from a larger body who knows the area, knows our districts. And I haven't seen that money trickle down to my East New York. And I'd like to see some kind of listing, some kind of, if you can send my office the information of how much of that came to East New York, groups in East New York, groups in Brownsville, and Harlem, and Bedford-Stuyvesant, Crown Heights, and East Flatbush. These groups suffer when they come up with these new schemes, and sometimes competitive schemes, sometimes not competitive, but it's not trickling down to the communities that are in the greatest of need. And I'd just like some response to that.
Yeah, thank you, Assemblyman. I certainly understand your point and the observation. I think we have tried, in the case of the New York City Regional Council, and I don't expect this to satisfy you totally, but I'll give, just to try to respond. In the case of that council, they make a lot of the decisions. ESD is the administrative body that moves the money per their requests. But what I have seen is at least a concentration of, or a direction to get the Regional Council project support out of the New York City Central Business District, to be sure. In other words, not to do Manhattan projects south of 96th Street, and to do projects in Upper Manhattan, Harlem, and then Staten Island, the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn. Central Brooklyn, I'd have to check to see how much we've done in the communities you just described. So there is an effort to get the resources, to the boroughs beyond Manhattan. That's just their decision. The other thing I would note, and it's incumbent upon us to get you more information about this, especially to share with your constituents, is that beyond the regional council system, we have a whole lot of other services at ESD around small business assistance, entrepreneurship, and access to capital. And because we happen, as I was telling the Assemblywoman, to run the MWBE programs, we have some new loan funds. We even have an MWB investment fund. It's modest, but we have investment capital for qualifying firms. And one of the problems we have is that if you take our $50 million revolving loan fund for small businesses, which is fully subscribed, if you take a couple of other access to capital programs, they actually are very effective tools. We run a network of 24 EAPs, or entrepreneurial assistance programs, and those are based in community organizations. Now, I'd have to check, and we might be short and have to come up with some new partners in the neighborhoods you cited. But my point is, we do have a lot of entrepreneurial support and small business support. We don't do a good job promoting it. And we need to get the word out. And we need more people. When people find out about these programs, they knock on the door and we can help them, and that's the good thing. But I take your comments very seriously and certainly be open to working with you and figuring out a couple of organizations, for example, where we might be able to help those.
Well, it's more of a criticism than a comment, but I appreciate your response, and I hope that it can really be attended to, because communities are hurting, and we need to know who becomes a part of this the Regional Development Council in our particular area, and how are they handpicked, or how does that happen? And I would like to see a real thorough report on that for those areas, because I just don't see it trickling down to my East New York, and I'm sure there's others who can feel the same way. On the minority and woman-owned businesses, you know, they always talk about the percentage of the contracts. I always like to know the percentage of the money we receive. In New York, we did a feasibility study, and we noticed that even when we get a larger number of contracts, the amount of money, let's say there's $9 billion worth of contracts, even if we get 100 more than last year, we only get like 100 million of that 9 billion. So the contracts are much smaller, and the white-owned businesses, particularly white men-owned businesses, get tremendously huge amounts of money for the contracting. Do you have any breakdown on how much actual money the minority and women-owned businesses are awarded when they receive these contracts?
Well, the number that I used before, which is, I believe, is a little over $2 billion for last year,
You said 2 million?
billion with a B. It's a good increase from where we were. But that's directly to the certified firms. I think I know what you're talking about. Sometimes there's situations where there'll be a firm that is serving as a pass-through, or that the firm isn't really, the MWB isn't actually getting the money.
Exactly.
But no, this data that we use is these are contracts awarded to the certified firm. We know the name of the firm, and there's no intermediary. I'm not saying that other situation doesn't happen.
Right.
We have to police that or look out for that carefully. But the actual dollar value has increased significantly.
What's the total amount of contracting the state does? That's $2 billion of what amount?
Of the overall state procurement, I'm not sure. I'd have to look at
I'd
it.
like to,
Yeah, that's it's a fair question.
know
Absolutely.
that, because then that will know whether it's, you know, when you say $2 billion, it's
Right.
like,
It's a big
wow.
increase, but what's the base?
Right.
Right. That's fair. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Adams, when you had answered some questions about Startup New York with Senator Kruger, and I think you said 17 new businesses that from out of state,
That's correct.
and how many from in-state?
Well, there's 73 so far. Every
the-
week we have new
So
applications.
the
but
difference is from in New York State.
The New York State would be, 73 is the total. Take out 16, you have 37 and 20, so 57.
All right. So when this tax credit, or not tax credit, tax-free, was first introduced, it was my understanding that it was to attract people from out of New York into New York. Is that fair? Was that a fair representation of what the?
That is certainly one of the goals, yes.
There's certainly what?
It's one of the goals.
Well, when this was being built, I thought it was start up in New York, and it didn't seem to me it would be a business who happens to be in New York that goes on a campus, a college campus, and starts another company. Actually, the same company, but is expanding there. Now, has that been done by the in-state New York companies, namely existing company and goes on a college campus or some other state-owned property and expands their business? Is that happening?
Again, the breakdown of the current group that we have, the largest single set are the startups themselves. And so just to pause on that for a moment, these are the...
No,
these
no, excuse me, I hate to interrupt you.
Sure.
But I don't want to get off on a tangent. I'm asking you right now in this program, are there any companies that were in existence in the state of New York, expanded on a college campus, and that's where their new facility is? Are there any companies that
Yes.
got those? Okay. Now, explain the logic behind that when we have many, many existing companies in the state of New York who are paying taxes, their employees are paying taxes, that what does that bring to the state of New York? If they're going to expand, can't you give them benefits to expand at their existing facility, so at least they pay property taxes, or the jurisdiction they were in don't lose the property tax base?
The answer is we do, you are right in that we have our existing Excelsior and other programs to support expansions when it's required. But there are situations that this is 20 of these companies of the 73, were already existing companies in New York State. You are correct. But when they were considering an expansion, the risk was that they would add that new line, that new function, that new service at a facility out of state. And so we can say to them at this point, well, we'd rather have you make those investments, do that expansion, create the jobs in New York, and you can do it through, if it's appropriate, because you really need a university partner and you want to do something on a school campus, you can go into the startup route, or you could potentially be eligible for our Excelsior tax credit program. So we give them a choice. The goal is to capture the investment and to have those jobs stay here.
Well, isn't that the whole point of economic development? You give benefits so people will retain jobs in our state. Isn't that the whole of all economic development projects? And to explain to me what's the logic why anyone would take Excelsior benefits only, and that's their incentive. Some have done that to stay here. Right. And then all of a sudden there's a new program. Boy, were we stupid. We could have moved on a college campus rather than expanded here. No income taxes, no property taxes for 10 years, and our employees get the benefit as well.
Well, two things. One, of course, is the existing facility. We're talking about expansions where the existing facility stays where it is, in whatever the jurisdiction it is, and is still a New York State taxpayer. It's just the expansion, the new business that may move into the district. But, you know, what happens is, you know, I certainly understand your question, and I think it's important that we have a variety of tools, whether it's Excelsior or startup, to keep the jobs and keep the investments here. But there is a difference. You know, first of all, you can't have both. And there are companies that, for financial reasons, if they have a very big capital investment, like building a new factory, buying a lot of equipment, Excelsior is a better benefit. They're also small. A lot of these are tech companies, almost all of them. And small tech companies don't have much of a New York State income tax liability. So the benefit is not as attractive as an investment tax credit, for example. So we take it case by case.
Do we advertise this program in the state of New York?
Do we advertise it in the state?
Yeah.
Yes,
And do we advertise it out of the state?
we do.
How much was the total advertising budget for last year?
In 2014, and I saw this actually, I know it was reported in Cranes today, we spent something like $24 million on startup advertising. There may be some additional spending later in the year, which I don't have yet, but that's been reported.
24 million, and what did you project based upon the promised jobs? Do you project how much lost revenue there will be in the state of New York for giving 10 years free taxes for every employee? Do you have any estimated number?
DOB, when the program's been in law for 14 months now, started January 1st last year. And last year, I recall DOB did a projection, you know, conservative projection about what this could cost in tax expenditures to the state. I can get that figure for you. I don't recall what it is. That's over, remember, it's a 10-year, it's over the life of the program.
Yeah, but what I'm not talking about tax expenditures, I'm talking about how much income tax savings the employee, say you're creating 50 jobs on a college campus that used to be over 10 miles away in another place paying property taxes. So you move over to the college campus, 50 employees are there and the new expansion, and they don't have to pay income taxes. You could get an idea as to what the average wage is, right? Estimate what the taxes would be, right?
Right.
In order to determine the effectiveness of the program. Has that been done?
Again, DOB's done projections, and yes, we can look at that, but again, the general view is most of these companies, so 20 out of the 73 were existing New York City employers. The others were not. So 37, the largest group, are companies that didn't exist before. And that's the core of this too, right? This, like it says, Startup New York. So those are legitimate startups hatched by these various universities that sponsored them. And in many cases, as we know, unfortunately, historically, those companies would have left. Our IP, our innovation, our invention ends up in San Diego or Austin, Texas, or Massachusetts. So this is a way to capture it on these campuses. So that, so far, is working.
Okay, I don't have any more time at this point, but you're going to give everybody a list of the nature of the name and nature of the company that are participating in Startup New York.
Yes, be pleased to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Assemblyman Redbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Adams. I enjoy having worked with you in many different capacities over your career, particularly when you were doing economic development in Brooklyn, and I was in the New York City Council, and I know you're closing your tenure in this position and going on to a different position at taxation. Hopefully, if I assume you have to be confirmed, is that?
That's correct. Yeah.
But I want to, praise the efforts that you've done. You had testified in your testimony about the new New York Broadband Fund and the billion-dollar investment, and I think there's an additional $500 million in this current budget, executive budget, for that. And then you talk about the private sector leveraging. Can you kind of walk us through how that works, and is it like a PP3? How would the the leverage aspect with the additional $500 million potentially work? And how would somebody apply for that? What would be the process, et cetera?
Thank you, Assemblyman, and thanks for your kind words. I would describe it this way. There's $500 million proposed in the executive budget for this broadband initiative. That funding is proposed to come from some of the settlement funds. And it's supposed to be matched 1-to-1, so by another over time $500 million, by private companies that do broadband deployment. This follows the model we've been using since the beginning of the first term, where we work with the carriers to deliver high-speed broadband to areas where it's frankly uneconomic for them because it's far away or there are not enough people, not enough users, and they need, again, kind of support or an incentive to do what we call it the last mile, but to go the distance. The other thing we're going to do with this new program is make sure we're talking about high-speed broadband, speeds of 100 megabytes per second and up, not just broadband. So it's expensive to do this, but it's vital infrastructure. I think the governor's kind of called it the interstate highway system of the 21st century. Remember, this will get high-speed broadband to rural healthcare facilities, to inner-city housing developments, where remarkably in New York City there's still a lack of broadband, to educational institutions, community partners, of course, individuals, homes, and businesses. There are about 1 million people in New York State who still don't have access to broadband. But that's how it will work, a public-private partnership where we'll do RFPs with the carriers. They'll compete, but they'll have to match the funds.
Okay, and then just going back to the Economic Development Council, I think it's been a very successful program. The complaint, I guess, from someone representing a district in Queens is that there really hasn't been enough emphasis percentage-wise in New York City for that particular program, other than the CUNY component. And I attended a number of meetings at York College of that component. Can you give us kind of a percentage breakdown of the overall program, the $2.35 billion? How much of that went to New York City? And I'm assuming it's a much smaller percentage. And the second part of my question is, how can we get that percentage up?
Each year, we've had roughly $720, $740 million in the CFA process. And so, 10 regions all competing for funds means you get region to region anywhere from, 250 million, 300 million, 325 million. It depends on the region and on the competition. It is true that New York City has received less, and it has concentrated it on some significant projects in and around the city. Our new borough president, Melinda Katz, has made this point about Queens quite clear to me, you should know, as have other members of the delegation from Queens, and so we're always looking for good Queens projects to support. And I think the answer, you know, Carol Conslato and some of the members from Queens that are on the regional council, you know, it is competitive, and the answer is, and again, my ESD staff is very open to this, we need to work with the volunteers on the New York City Regional Council and make sure that this year, moving forward, 2015, they identify excellent projects that are worthy of funding and can compete with the other programs around the state. So every year, we're going to take a run, we'll take another run at that this year. I think there's some good projects, and I think some are emerging in Queens, some new technology projects, and a host of things. You mentioned York Community College. That's the site of a new startup zone, and I think we've got some opportunities there as well.
Right, and I assume even if you're in your new capacity, we can rely on you as a resource to help out in those efforts?
Absolutely. I don't want to, you know, should the Senate confirm my appointment, I hope to work with all of you in that new capacity. Remember that, to a great degree, Tax and Finance is a sister agency to ESDC because the ESDC tax credit programs all run through Tax and Finance. So I would look forward, given the opportunity, I'd look forward to working with you, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Assemblyman Walter.
One of the big selling points on the regional economic development councils is the bottom-up approach, the local decision-making. But in the governor's proposed budget, there's requirements that he's putting on IDAs that would actually result in surrender of considerable control of local economic development to the state. It'll shift local decision-making actually to ESD and to taxation and finance. How does that compare with the idea of having local control?
Well, this is one of the areas where we really want to increase accountability and transparency for everybody, something we talk about all the time. And the concept here, as you know, is that when an IDA is doing a project and wants to confer the state portion of the sales tax as a benefit, the IDA should check in with state government because it is conferring a state resource. And administratively, the way to do that, as proposed, would be to have the IDA communicate with ESD about what they propose to do and why, what the project is for which they're going to give up the state portion of the sales tax. We think that's reasonable, and again, it gets to this idea of accountability to taxpayers, transparency, and efficiency. Now, administratively, the good news here, because I've spoken about this to Brian McMahon and others, at IDAs, is that we already work at ESD so closely with IDAs all around the state. I mean, close personal relationships, staff to staff. We believe we can turn around these decisions very quickly and not slow down. We don't want to get in the way of the IDA's success at the local level. So we're committed to working very quickly and efficiently and turning around those requests and approving them when we can. And if we have to hold them up and ask questions, we'll do that too. But that's how it would work.
But those decisions then will be made in Albany and not locally.
Well, the IDA would make all the other decisions with respect to property tax, pilots, and the county portion of the sales tax, typically benefits they confer in these projects. It's simply coming to us for a quick check on what's the project, and does the state agree that it is appropriate to authorize them to confer the state portion of the sales tax, the 4%.
So you're only signing off on the state portion of the
As I understand it at this time, Assemblyman, yes, that's the control we would have.
Okay. Not having veto authority over the project itself.
Well, I don't believe we would have veto authority over the project itself. We might withhold the state portion of the sales tax if we thought it was not an appropriate use of the funds. Again, as I understand the proposal today.
It's my understanding, we talk about IDAs and transparency. According to the state comptroller's report, not the most recent report that you referenced before, but the recent annual report on IDAs, IDAs are assisting about 4,600 active projects, created 112,000 new jobs, with total investment exceeding $78 billion. Average cost per job slightly more than $2,500. How does ESD compare with their cost per job?
It depends on the program. Those are good numbers. And IDAs, we have our Excelsior program is about $7,000 per job, for example, so their number is lower, but both of those are really very economic compared to other states. Again, we work very closely with IDAs, and I'm glad you framed this by referring to the regional councils. You know, the regional council system, all 10 regions, depend on partnerships with local IDAs. And again, our ESD staff works very closely with New York City EDC, Brian McMahon's organization, and his members. We learn a lot from them. We try to run our programs in conjunction with them, and work closely on the ground through the regional councils and through our, we have 10 ESD regional offices, work very closely with IDAs all across the state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator?
Senator Kennedy?
Thank you very much. First of all, congratulations on your appointment once again, and once again, thank you for everything that you've been doing on behalf of our state and economic development, as well as out in Western New York, where we've seen a resurgence and some great momentum, in large part because of your work, and I appreciate it very much, and our community does as well. One of the driving forces behind this resurgence in Western New York is the relationship between higher education and economic development. Can you talk a little bit about higher education working hand in hand with the regional councils, how we've helped to turn Buffalo around using that model, and if you could discuss some of the budgetary items this year that'll encourage communities across the state to use this same model?
Yes, thank you, Senator. And Buffalo is indeed a good example for looking at the effectiveness of these higher education partnerships. Broadly, I'd say first that when the governor took office and we began this work in the first term, he made it clear that the state had an underutilized economic development asset, and really a glaring omission, if you will, which was the higher education system we have in the state, which is just a unique foundation for economic development. 65 SUNY campuses, 29 CUNY campuses, 150 plus or minus private and independent college universities. No other state has such an array of excellent institutions, from two-year community colleges to a UB, for example, in your district, that offer such a, literally and geographically, because of their geographic distribution, especially in the SUNY system, a foundation to rebuild an economy. This is especially true for upstate. So there are a number of initiatives that play off this very simple and important idea that we have this foundation of institutions, and they should help drive local economic development. To wit, in the regional council system, each one of our 10 regions has a co-chair, a business leader, and a local higher education leader. Top-down, involved with, Startup New York program we've been discussing this afternoon wouldn't exist if it weren't for the fact that we've got this network of schools that are doing great research, that are supporting technology, and that were exporting young people. They were exporting IP, they were exporting innovation, until we came up with a way to capture that with these tax benefits on tax-free zones on college campuses. And to your point, in the case of UB, and I'd add Damon and a host of other schools in the region, a great incubator, for example, in Dunkirk or SUNY Fredonia, and so on, we've seen just a tremendous amount of enthusiasm from the schools, students, faculty, administrators, researchers, to take advantage of these various programs. If you think about again, just to speak to your district, the impact over time of a $110 million investment in the New York Genome Center, and in that project, I know you're familiar with it, but that's something that was anchored in New York City, 14 leading biomedical research institutions coming together, share technology around genomic research, the most cutting-edge medical research going on in the world. And the governor said, that's good that you're in New York City, partner with UB, and let's do all the data and the information management and the analytics at this facility at UB. Bridging that gap, bringing that together, $110 million split between the city and Buffalo. Their examples are, again, through Startup, through NYSTAR, all of our programs, the Centers for Excellence, Centers for Advanced Technology, all across the state. Anytime we can leverage colleges and universities to attract investment and create jobs in those local communities, we're going to do it. And so there is a menu now of opportunities. You've been very helpful. All of you have in different ways at helping us to make sure at ESD, we partner with the right schools, but it's a surefire formula for economic recovery in New York, and it's paying great dividends.
Thank you. Assemblyman Garbarino.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to follow up on some Startup New York stuff that was already testified to. Currently, college campuses don't have to be public universities, or they don't have to be on state property for Startup New York to apply, correct? Or to apply for, to participate in Startup New York?
That's correct. In other words, most of the space is, if, you know, we have 63 of our 73 schools in the program are SUNY schools, I believe. So in most cases, it is public property because it's a SUNY campus that has empty space or empty buildings. But there are ways to get additional space if your campus doesn't have space, but that's the common approach.
But a private university could apply to be part of Startup New York?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so with this expansion to airports, why is it now limited to just state-owned property, airports like Republic or Stewart?
Well, in the original startup legislation, there was a provision for state facilities, thinking of other state properties that OGS had, or, you know, for example, we've done some prison closures, we do have state assets. And the idea was if a school was, you know, had constraints, public or private, you know, didn't have enough space and wanted to use some space that the state owned, perhaps that might work. They'd have to apply and get it certified. And so the case of these airports, the interesting thing is, yes, it's state-owned. There is abundant space available, especially in the case of Stewart. And there is already some economic activity. So do we have colleges and universities that want to take advantage of that and promote more of that economic activity? And honestly, it's up to those schools.
Well, what concerns me is, you know, 5 minutes from my house on Long Island and 20 minutes from Republic Airport is Long Island MacArthur Airport, which is a very big airport on Long Island. It's actually struggling. Now, what would stop the state from wanting to help? That airport has plenty of open space. What would stop the state from wanting to help schools that want to, you know, do something there?
You know, I'd have to look at I don't know if the state owns the land under MacArthur Airport.
Now, I believe it's, you know, the town of Islip, I believe, owns
Right,
it.
it's the town.
But I mean, still, just because the town owns it, we should say, you know what, let's not let them
You know, I guess,
apply.
I don't know enough about it, but I'm happy to work with you on it. What I would say is if at MacArthur, and if in the town of Islip, they're interested in leveraging some of their privately owned space, we don't have to go the startup route. We have other ESD programs that we might be able to use to help them. In other words, if startup didn't work, right?
Okay, but I mean, but it seems like the big, you know, push from this administration is Startup New York. That's all the commercials, that's all they say. So, you know, I don't know why we would have MacArthur competing, you know, the idea behind Startup New York was we wouldn't have businesses competing, you know, with similar businesses already in, you know, already around. So why would we have Republic Airport competing with MacArthur Airport and giving them a leg up?
Well, it isn't, you know, I would suggest it isn't actually sort of the competition you typically think about in business, because remember, there's a control in the law that says if a business at MacArthur wanted to move down the road and go to Republic into some tax-free zone, it would frankly be quite hard for them to do that. A couple things would have to happen. It would have to be basically they'd be creating a new, like an expansion, as we described before. So they wouldn't be moving their business. Maybe they're creating a new business subsidiary, new company, all new investment, all new jobs. Maybe that works. But there's one last check that's really important here. Whenever a school is, because the schools bring the businesses to us, right? And the process requires that the school does a notification of businesses in the area. So Republic would have to notify all the businesses in the area. And the question is the business that the school is bringing in that case it's Farmingdale, Malloy, I think, is working there. So let's say Malloy says that we want to bring in this business. Is there any local competitor that would object? If a business at Republic says, yeah, I object, because that business from MacArthur, that's what I do, airplane fuel, then the commissioner denies that. It comes to me and we deny it. It's a control against competition. That's built into the law. And interestingly, already some businesses have thought about going to startup and said, I'll never get approved because the competitor over there won't let me in. And that's correct. That's a control in the law that the local businesses get to say, don't give him tax-free zones or her. That would be tax-free benefits. That would be unfair competition. And then the school can't advance the application.
That's local businesses at Republic, is what you said. Like Republic, the businesses that are there could stop another one from coming in.
Right.
So but I'm worried about businesses at MacArthur, which you said, you know, yourself would be a tough lift for somebody to go over. But it seems, you know, based on your testimony, there are a lot of the new businesses that are under Startup New York have been expansions from, you know, businesses already going. So I'm worried about people leaving MacArthur and going over to Republic, or people saying, you know what, let's start this new place, this competing business
Right.
at Republic, and, you know, all of a sudden I have a new, you know, private airline at Republic, and
And
now
not
my
at
one
MacArthur.
now my one in
Right.
MacArthur goes down,
Right.
because they can
Again,
charge
if
less.
it,
'cause
it
it's-
would have to be it would have to be a completely new business with new jobs and new investment. And, you know, to some degree, let's remember, on Long Island, I mean, all over the state, we need that. You know, we need new jobs and we need new investment. And sometimes there might be a rub. I'd hope we could work with those companies and, you know, work with the you know, in that case, MacArthur, and find ways to help them. But at the end of the day, the goal here is, you know, basic. It's jobs, jobs, jobs. We have startup, and we have regional councils, and we have these other programs, Excelsior, as I mentioned. You know, and all of this is, in the end, at least, you know, as of last year, we're down to 5.7% unemployment in New York State, 504,000 new private sector jobs created. I mean, things are going in the right direction. We're not there yet, but these programs are helping.
I'm not saying, you know, stop this new expansion. I'm just saying maybe we could also include other airports. I mean, you know, it doesn't have to be just state-owned, because I think then you're going to cause a problem. You'll have these other
Right.
people competing. If it's open anywhere, then you let at least the person decide where they want to go, where it's best can fit their business.
That's true. That's true.
So maybe we could, you know, look at that and maybe expand it to other airports as well. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. D.D. Barrett. Al Streepy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioner. I want to talk a little bit about export trade and your Global New York program. As soon as the Great Recession hit, New York sort of cut many of their programs. They went from 13 foreign offices down to, I think, 3. They stopped doing lots of trade missions and, you know, basically helping any of the companies with export. I think as of last year, we're trying to add some more foreign offices and do some other things. But with the money that you're talking about, the $35 million, what types of initiatives are actually going to be allowed? Do companies apply individually? Are you doing things for different markets or different industries? Or how is that going to work?
Thank you. The $35 million proposal that's in the governor's executive budget would fund 2 new services. Most of it, the bulk of it would go, $25 million, to basically a financing tool, kind of like the Ex-Im Bank down in Washington, to provide low-cost financing for small and mid-sized companies that are looking to explore new markets and export their New York-made goods or services into these new markets. And again, because of their size and in many cases their lack of experience at foreign trade, they have trouble getting traditional bank financing. For example, just letters of credit or other tools to help them finance, you know, build up inventory, ship it, hope to get paid, that kind of thing. And so this has been done through the Ex-Im Bank, but as folks have seen, and the governor's pointed out, that is subject to congressional authorization, and it's been kind of been caught up, and there's some questions about the future of the Ex-Im Bank in Washington. And what we want to be able to do in New York is have a New York financing facility to support trade by small and mid-sized companies in the state. Another portion of the $35 million would be, and it's a smaller amount, but we would do some matching grants. We had a program for many years called GEMS, the Global Export Marketing Services. And this is one of our programs where this funding, again, a matching grant for a company, imagine an upstate manufacturer, for example, that wants to do some research, hire a consultant, get financial advisors, and start to structure their first trade deal. So that's market research, buyers, shipping, technical assistance. And that, for the first time, to get into export can be expensive. So a matching grant, they'd have to match the grant. It would be kind of a public-private partnership. It would help them do that. But generally speaking, we don't want access to capital, access to low-cost financial resources to be an obstacle in the way of New York State companies, especially manufacturers, who are pursuing trade opportunities overseas. And then to your earlier point about our offices, you're absolutely right, Assemblyman. did go through a retrenchment as the result of the kind of fiscal crunch many years ago, but have since, and gradually and carefully, secured consultants in several key markets. By the way, the Comptroller's report I referenced earlier says we have offices, and some people believe that. We don't have offices, physical spaces. We do an RFP process and select trade consultants. They have to have their own office. That's not really our business. But we do need people on the ground in places like Mexico and Shanghai and London and Israel and in Canada, of course. We have something in both in Toronto and Quebec. So we have these consultants that are poised and ready to help these firms, and the funding would only go out again on those resources, as I've described, to help finance that trade, and also to attract foreign investment to New York.
Do you know of any other funding that's available for major trade shows or anything like that, that we could have a delegation of companies go over under one roof?
We don't, that's a difficult question. Again, ESD's budget over the years has been, does not allow for very much of that. And so on a case-by-case basis, we evaluate those opportunities and often partner with universities, private firms, SUNY, and others to put together those trips. But we'd be happy to work with you on that, identify firms if you have in the district firms. We do have, one last point on this, we do have at ESD a federal grant from the Department of Commerce called STEP. And STEP enables us to provide financial support to firms to do trade missions. And so we have done a number of small trade missions using the STEP grant, and we have some of that funding available this year.
Okay. Back over to the $1.5 billion Upstate Revitalization Fund. Originally you talked about infrastructure, things like that, you could use the money for in order to attract businesses. But you also mentioned workforce development. What kind of workforce development things would be eligible through the $500 million grants?
That's going to be determined. It's a really important question. It will be determined by the regions, each of the 7 regions as they do their plans. If history is a guide, and Assemblyman Schimminger, I think, mentioned this, in the regional council system, you've got these higher education institutions that are very active participants, and you have a lot of people that are very keen on building a trained and high-quality and attractive workforce to attract the investment. So, for example, again, in the case of UB, Senator Kennedy referred to it as well, they built workforce training, kind of high-tech manufacturing training, into their plan for the Buffalo Billion come from day one. And I would imagine, again, as a guide, that these other regions, as they compete this summer for the Upstate Revitalization Funds, are going to develop, based on their industries and their economic goals, but they're going to develop workforce training programs in conjunction with university partners. We'll certainly look for that. So I think that's one way that that's going to happen. And there are other, at the State Department of Labor, in the traditional CFA or Regional Council process, and even at ESD now, at least in the new budget, there are other resources for workforce training. It is critically important. I mean, I'm glad you raised it, and I think you'll see those 7 regions advancing plans as part of the competition.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we've been, next to testify, Mr. Thiel.
I don't know if I'm going to testify, but I'm going to ask a question. Commissioner, first of all, I just want to follow up on something Assemblyman Garbarino said, and that is there's actually another government-owned airport in Suffolk County also, which Suffolk County owns.
Gabreski?
That, Gabreski, correct. That I would associate my comments with his with regard to Gabreski, which has a lot of land and is trying to promote some economic development there.
And which, last I checked, was in your district.
You would be right in that assumption. Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Regional Economic Development Councils. You said in your testimony that $2.9 billion has been allocated. How much of that money has actually gotten, as of today, has gotten out the door? How much of it has actually been dispersed?
Good question. Some of it is just in general. Our funds are not dispersed until projects are completed. Okay. So when we say allocated, that's kind of with a capital A, in the sense that if you take a lot of that funding through the regional councils is our Excelsior Tax Credit Program, which I mentioned earlier. And we do a schedule with a company for that tax credit. It only has value, they only can actually use it against their corporate tax return or get it refunded after they have made their investments, created the jobs, and paid the wages. We have to certify all that.
Okay.
The grant portions of the regional council money, which frankly, that's the $150 million in the budget, is strictly on a reimbursement basis. So some companies actually say, well, why don't you just give me the money up front? I have to go pour concrete. We say, no, we can't do that. We have to protect the New York State taxpayer. You go pour your concrete, you know, send us all the documentation that the building is up and done, the equipment is bought, jobs are created, and on a reimbursement basis, our ESD board will approve or should approve that grant. So that's the control in place, and that's a way of saying that $3.9 billion has been allocated. It does not go out the door until projects are complete.
So I guess my follow-up question is, how many projects have been completed and how much money has gotten out the door?
You know, the first year, the people were just getting started, and there was some, you know, it was just getting going. Now, after 4 years, you know, we're tracking 3,119 projects, I believe, over 3,000 in the system. I'd have to check to see the final number. You know, from 2011, 2012, those are coming to completion. And I can get that for you, the
That would be
complete
great.
number.
Thank you.
But I'm pleased to tell you, again, as a marker more, not of ESD's work, but of just a generally improving economy, there's a higher percentage of projects reaching completion on their original timeline. A few years ago, with the economic downturn at ESD, our data would show you, we'd have a fall off of projects. You know, we'd do an incentive project with a company, and economic conditions made it hard to happen, and so we wouldn't pay it out. You'd have that fall off. But things are going much better now.
Okay. Again, with the Regional Economic Development Councils, you know, it has been 4 years now, and I guess my question is I've been through, you've been here long enough to see economic development programs proposed and enacted and then discredited, and say, well, it didn't provide the jobs we thought it was going to. And, you know, you talked about the Comptroller's report about tax credits today. So what is, for the Regional Economic Development Councils, what is our standard? What is going to be our measurement of success as we get, say, 5 years from now, and we're looking back and we see, well, this is what we spent. What is going to be the measure of success?
You know, we look at, it's a very important question, and we look at several things. Clearly, job creation. It really is, even in the infrastructure projects, even in the projects where it doesn't look like jobs are the goal, at the end of the day, that's what we want to see. New private sector jobs in Nassau and Suffolk, right? Rising employment, lowering unemployment. So we look for job creation, and we look at cost per job, which your colleague asked about before. We actually compare that performance to peer states with other large economies and incentive programs to make sure we're being very prudent stewards of the taxpayer dollar. And we look for leverage. So for example, in regional councils, we originally said we wanted to see a 5-to-1 investment ratio. In other words, if you were to put up, you know, if the state were going to commit $10 of Excelsior, that the project would have $50 of private investment. We're running higher than that. It's probably closer to 1 to 7 or 1 to 8, which is good. But that's the kind of thing we track. There's another piece built into this, which is, again, it really comes through the councils themselves. Not ESD here is just the administrator. Each one of these 10 councils has a long-term economic development plan that they did in 2011. Every year, they have to report on their progress. Are they actually advancing that plan? Are the projects that we're funding building that plan out? And so every year they report. All of these reports are on our website, along with 24 other reports. And they're really interesting to look at. They're very detailed, they're very specific, but we hold them to that. They must continue to build out the plan that they proposed to all of us, the governor and all of you, in 2011. So we'll track that as well.
Okay, my last point on this is, you know, the Regional Economic Development Councils have done a lot of good projects across Long Island in my area and in my district. But I always get the situation, it happens almost every year, where somebody will have a proposal and it doesn't get funded, and you know the question is, well, who are those guys and how did these decisions get made? What's the process? Do you worry at all about transparency and how the Regional Economic Development Councils operate?
In other words, how should we answer that question to the
Well,
constituents?
yeah, I get asked
Yeah.
that question,
So,
I have
sorry,
to answer it.
you know, what I always go back to, because certainly I'm asked the same question, or in a similar question. And I always go back to I remind people, because I get the letters and calls too from the groups that don't, that it's a locally driven process. And the scoring is done first and foremost by committees that are set up by each of those councils. Every council does it slightly differently, but there's a local scoring committee that rates on a scale of 1 to 20 the degree to which they think that project will build out their long-term economic plan. Then the application has to go to the state agency that's the source of funds for compliance purposes, because it has to comply with all, check all the boxes and be appropriate under the statutes, rules, and regulations. And then the third element is really the competition, which is to say there's only X amount of money in the system. Like I said, we had over 3,000 applications on June 16th this past year. And we could fund about 700 projects. On December 6th, the governor announced about 700 of the 3,000. So the competitive nature just, again, you have to go to those scores and it gets sorted out. What I would say, and please direct any constituents to our office, both our office in Hauppauge and our office, well, anywhere to me, is that for folks who go into the system and don't get what they want, we want to work with them. There may be another way to help them. They may, if they just apply, this sometimes happens, if they just do a similar application next year, they may get something, and I got nothing the year before, just because of the competition, the way the funds got distributed. And by all means, go to all the public meetings, there's some going on this week, of the regional council to get to know who's who and what they care about.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, the staff on Long Island has been very good with projects that didn't succeed at first and working with individuals and applicants about, what makes a good application. I always appreciate that availability.
Thank you, Assemblyman. I'll share that with them. I appreciate that comment on their behalf.
Ms. Maliotakis?
Hello, Ken. How are you?
Great.
So there's been a lot of discussion about Startup New York. I simply have a comment, really, and I think that, it's great that we created 2,100 jobs with this program, but we still have the 49th highest tax rate and worst business climate in the country. And so there needs to be more of a long-term plan into what's going to happen after these 10 years. So everyone's here, they're getting these benefits, they're not paying any of these taxes. But then what happens after 10 years? They'll just pick up and leave if we don't fix this climate. I mean, that's just, I think, my general view of the whole thing. So I appreciate the steps that we've taken over the last couple of years, improving the corporate income tax rate, improving the manufacturing tax rate. I think those are good steps, but I just feel like there's missing a long-range plan here, because still we have so many other businesses that aren't getting any of these benefits and are still, a victim of the 49th worst climate of the country. So I don't know if you wanted to maybe comment on that. If you do, if not, I have other questions that I'd like to specifically ask.
Well, just briefly, I would just agree with what you're saying, very much so. New York is a $1.2 trillion economy. It's one of the top 20 economies of the world. 500,000 employers, it's a big, big economy. And so the way to move, the way to really do things at scale is through broad-based improvements to the business climate. The broad-based tax reduction you cited, other initiatives the governor and his legislative partners you all have done to just improve the business climate. So it's a two-tracked approach. What we're talking about in the hearing here are really our programmatic approaches, startup, regional councils, other tools that we have, MWBE. Those are programmatic approaches. We have to do that. And that's day in, day out, helping businesses grow and create jobs. At the same time, we have to be pursuing the broad-based reforms to the business climate, to lower taxes, reduce burdensome regulation, and make it an easier place to do business in. With respect to startups, simply put, it is our hope that 10 years out, the business climate is more attractive, and that the partnerships forged between the colleges, the students, the researchers, and the companies, that's going to be the same people, kind of create a glue. And that it's hard to leave because your workforce, your research, your lab technicians, the people, the partnerships are very, very powerful part of this, and I hope will be, in their success, a deterrent to companies leaving.
Well, I hope so too, and I look forward to working with you to see how we can do that. Moving on to the Regional Economic Development Council, I know a couple of my colleagues have mentioned that they feel that they don't know about the process, they're not included in the process, they're not informed when decisions are made on who these grants are going to. Specifically in my community, it was devastated by Hurricane Sandy. We still have major issues in terms of our businesses getting up and running back on their feet. what role can the regional council play with these communities that have been devastated by the hurricane or not up and running yet? I mean, because to date, there hasn't been any movement on the regional council front. I'm thinking that there's really a good place for them to be involved.
Well, it's certainly something that they should, and Cesar Claro and the Chamber and other groups on Staten Island should bring to the regional council's attention. I would hope they'd done that already, but we should have that conversation and see if there are special initiatives that the regional council this coming year could consider to help them. One of the interesting dynamics is that the business support post-Sandy in New York City was administered by the city.
Yes.
Just as, by the way, the HUD aid was split up, whereas our support was focused on Long Island, Hudson Valley. That's not, by any means, that doesn't get off the hook. You know, the governor has us firmly committed, obviously, and wants us to help those businesses. So we should have that discussion with you and with anybody you want.
I would very much appreciate that if I can follow up with you offline, and maybe we can have a meeting with some of these businesses to just so you can get a real sense of what they're going through. I mean, we've had employers that employed 60-something people and are now down to about 5 people.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's devastating, I think, and I really do believe there's a role for the council to play in this, and so I would appreciate your help with that. My last question, last year we passed legislation to put a 6% set aside for state contracts for veteran-owned businesses. Can you just give me an idea of where that's at right now in terms of implementing it?
What we did last year, we looked at our network of these 24 EAPs, Entrepreneurial Assistance Programs, that are community-based and all around the state, brought them together in the summertime for a special conference and training, kind of a train-the-trainer thing, and brought in colleagues from Veterans Affairs and worked with them. And the idea here was to, and we had some extra funding for this, we gave them additional support. Each one of these centers help veterans that wanted to launch businesses but needed some technical assistance getting started. So we put that new program out into our network where we do small business assistance and entrepreneurial support. And I'd have to look at sort of where we are with that and get you more specifics, but that was the initial effort we made last summer at the governor's request. And now this idea, you're right, is, okay, can we have a program where some amount of state contracts, you know, can be awarded to, in this case, I think it's disabled veterans who have businesses. And so administratively, what we have to figure out, Assemblyman, is, okay, what's the registration or certification process for those businesses? And then what are the types of procurements, and how do we, you know, build a system for that? And so we're working on that, and I'd be happy to get you more information. It's really important.
That would be great. Obviously, I have a lot of veterans in my community, but I also, I don't represent Fort Hamilton, that is Assemblymember Krasny's district, but I'm right next door to that. And so we certainly can use them as a resource as well to disseminate this information as you get it.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Oakes?
Thank you. Last year, I believe maybe in 2013, the Senate had done a study on regulatory reform and put some dollar figure, $274 billion, on New York's regulations cost business. So has there been progress in eliminating any of those? And I guess my sense would be you're leaving now, so what would your recommendation be to the new commissioner as your successor to finally make more progress on this issue? When the regional structure was set up, my recollection is this was going to help be a process, collect information at the regional level, you know, make recommendations for regulatory changes. And it seems like out of the council structure, that hasn't been one of our great successes.
You know, there has been some significant success, especially in certain agencies that have a lot of interaction with businesses, and this is in my observation from ESD. And I'll cite a couple of examples, but the broad answer, you know, is you're right, and I remember that study. I think Senator Gallivan chaired the committee at the time, and it was in the Senate, and this was a big effort, and it identified a lot of important opportunities. At ESD, in any case, we did a thorough scrubbing of rules and regulations that we have that we thought ourselves might be unnecessarily burdensome or cumbersome. We found that a good number of them that we thought might have been rules were laws. A good number of them might have been a regulation was a statutory requirement. And so that makes it more complicated because it's harder just through rulemaking to make an amendment. But we have done that internal review. I know a lot of state agencies are doing this. And again, the examples I'd cite is SLA. You know, we run, we run this one-stop shop for all of anybody in the businesses of wineries and cideries and farm breweries and distilleries and the like. And under the leadership of Dennis Rosen, and at the governor's urging, and largely as a result of one of these big summits the governor hosted, a whole slate of regulatory reforms were proposed to SLA, and a great number of them were acted on. And the data we have now, because we run the one-stop shop, so we get the calls from the business owners with complaints, it's a whole nother story. It's a whole nother day. And the licensing data in the last few years is just tremendous. So the good news here is it can be done. That was focused reform just at SLA. At ESD, I always say we're the intermediary with the employer community, so we hear a lot of the stories, and then we go to the governor's office and get and the appropriate state agencies to try to do these reforms through rule and regulation internally. These summits, the governor hosts the one in agriculture, for example, same thing. The CAFO regulations were dramatically improved by most people's standards as a result of one of those summits for the concentrated animal feeding operations is a couple of years ago with Pat Hooker. But agency by agency, I mean, we are certainly under a mandate from the governor to internally scrub our rules and regulations and see how we can make them more business friendly. It's an ongoing process. My instruction to my successor, Howard Zemsey, is keep doing it. It's relentless. You can never give up. Just keep going, pressing at this. It's complicated. It's a lot of work. It keeps the lawyers busy, but we have to do it.
But in ESD, you have scrubbed some of those within your entity, you feel? Do you know how many of those you might have done, or?
In our case, Assemblyman, what we've tried to do, our scrubbing included procedural things that slowed us down. For a long time at ESD, certain programs that we had, you know, were just administrative. In their administration, we weren't working at the speed of business. And so businesses would complain, too long to get this, too long to get that. And we have done some internal reviews to streamline some of these internal processes, never sacrificing a degree of control or accountability, but administrative steps so we can work more quickly and be more responsive. I mean, that's one example we focused on.
One is that you talked about some of the laws needing changes. Certainly, I'm sure, you know, I would be happy to see that, or I think others in the legislature, you know, certainly to be a part of that. And I know every time there's law change, there ends up being different perspectives. But for instance, I just received today a company, you know, that works 9 days now for 80 hours, so that they give their employees a day off in that time. Paying weekly for that company is now confusing and difficult. How do you do that? Because individuals are now working, you know, imbalanced time. It makes it more difficult for them to do that. So, you know, that I know is a law type change, but there's lots of other ones. And again, my hope would be that as the REDCs continue on, that that process as it was intended, I think, to do some of that, hopefully maybe can be more of a active process.
I think that's right. I think it's a very helpful suggestion, and we can do, certainly in the new year, leverage their expertise. They're on-the-ground observers of these things, and they bring us a lot of good information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Krueger.
Thank you. So, Ken, it was just pointed out that you are going to be moving from this agency to another agency soon. But I'm just trying to get a understanding. So, you're the president of ESDC, the CEO, and also the DED commissioner, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you report to one board or multiple boards?
And, for ESDC, we have one board that I report to.
Do you have a separate, is there a separate board for DED?
No, that's a statutory department, but just for the record, I also, we have the JDA, you may recall, the Job Development Authority. That has a separate board.
Okay,
So I also report to that board.
So who's your board? Who's on your board? How many people?
Well, there's 9 board seats under the statute, myself included.
So you're one of the 9?
Yes, and then there are other individuals that have served for various tenures that are the board members.
Okay, so Department of Financial Services Superintendent, that's always the statutory head of the board?
No, just a seat. That's a board member.
So he's an ex officio director?
Yes,
That's
it's
what-
the title, not the person, but that person votes and participates in board meetings.
Okay. And then there's 3 directors appointed by the governor, according to the statute. So that's 4. Who are the other 5?
They
appoints
are,
them?
I actually don't remember who has the appointing authority. I would assume it's the legislature. I'm not sure who appoints them, but I can tell you who the people are, if that's your
Good.
question.
Okay, tell me who the 9 are.
From my memory, we had a board meeting last month. These are just, again, individual volunteers that serve on the ESD board. Rob Dyson, Derek Cephas, Joyce Miller. Anthony Albanese fills the seat that really is the DFS seat for Commissioner Ben Lawsky. Myself, that's 5, and we have 4 vacancies.
You have 4 vacancies?
Correct.
How long have there been 4 vacancies?
Well, unfortunately, 2 years ago, Julie Scheimer from Welch Allen, who was on our board, retired and moved to New Mexico. So we lost Julie, and we have not replaced Julie yet. And then we had another board member from Buffalo, Mr. Simonelli, who also just, basically, our board meets once a month, and it's a lot of material, a lot of work, and he was just too busy. So he had to step down, and we haven't replaced Paul yet. His name is Paul Simonelli. So we do have some vacancies and are looking for, to suggest candidates to fill those seats.
So 9 total, you're one of them, 4 are vacant, so 5 are filled, but you're one of them and you leave soon, so there'll be 4 vacancies. Or has the governor announced a new replacement for you?
For me, yes, Howard
Who's-
Zemsky.
I'm sorry?
His name is Howard Zemsky. He's actually from Buffalo. He has been, during our first term, a very helpful person in economic development there as co-chair of the Western New York Regional Economic Development Council, and in his private life, he's a real estate developer.
And then, just quickly with my last few minutes, there's so many different programs within ESDC, you're correct. But one of them that seems fairly large involves New York Power, distribution of money for energy programs, and one specific item was New York Power Electronic Manufacturing Consortium. I think, so last week, I think it was last week, I get confused, we had the ENCON, an energy hearing. And in that hearing, we were discussing the governor's proposals to put a total of $1 billion into a green bank. I think there was another $800 million into a solar energy effort. So there's all these other energy and environmental big capital economic development green projects. How do they intersect with monies that may be going through ESDC, and why would we have some of it's over here and some of it's over here?
I'm not sure which ESDC or DED program, I know there's a lot on that list, that you're referring to, but we don't currently, let me back up to say, there are about 50 programs on that list, and I actually went through and identified 25 that I knew of that were active. So some are in name only, and we should probably clean that up, but they may be buried in the statute somewhere. But again, that's something we need to address. So we don't have any major energy infrastructure programs currently active at ESD. And the program you referred to could be a legacy program. Again, most of the things on that list are legacy programs. So they're somewhere in statute and they get reported on, but there's no activity because they're not funded in the budget. And so what we do, to answer your question, is when we are working with a company, and this is very helpful to have the regional council system because it kind of does this for us, it forces this, we have that discussion about NYSERDA benefits or other NYPA power, low-cost power through the Recharge New York program, all at once. And we sit down and we say, if ESD is going to have, you know, a piece of this project that we're going to support through Excelsior or something like that, or a modest capital grant through the regional councils, what's coming in at the same time on the energy side? And that usually is energy efficiency programming support from NYSERDA or low-cost power from Recharge New York from NYPA. And we look at it holistically when we do the project.
But are they double counted sometimes so that when you're testifying or I'm looking at a report of ESDC related to green energy jobs, is that a double count if I'm going over and taking a look at NYSERDA or the Green Bank or NYPA's
Yeah.
programs? How do we
You know,
actually
fair
keep a
question.
master plan of what's happening?
In
in our-
very fair question, absolutely. In our counting of ESD's economic development projects and our incentives and the jobs created, no, there's not a double counting. The only area where occasionally that we have to be careful is regional councils. Why? Because we administer the regional council system. So when I say there are 3,119 projects over the last 4 years in regional councils, some of them a $10,000 project, some of them a $10 million project, they're not all done. We collect the data. We don't, those are not all ESD projects. That would include, there are 12 state agencies, 30 funding streams in regional councils. We roll all that up into those numbers. When I tell you there are 170,000 jobs retained or created by the regional council system, that's using the NYPA power, the Department of Labor resources, the ESD resources, and so on. So only in regional councils, we got to be careful we don't let people double count. And we roll that up and say that's regional council. It could be a variety of forms of support.
And if the public wants to go one place to see what the state is spending its money on or giving credits and abatements to under the giant rubric of economic development, that's not necessarily your sites at ESDC, but more likely your sites?
It is most likely our site where we are home to, over the weekend I found 23 different reports, not including the regional council reports. So again, and this is all a requirement, you know, under various programs and rules and regulations. So we have it there. I will confess that our site is not always just technically the most, you know, up-to-date, user-friendly thing, and we're working to make the site work better, to get to this, make this transparency just easy. I mean, I'd be the first to say it shouldn't be complicated or hard to get to our site and find a report on Excelsior tax credits from 2013. I mean, that's where we need to make some improvements in the user-friendliness of the site that helps people get to those reports. It's not to say we would have reports for NYSERDA or NYPA, programs I just described, on our site necessarily, although the regional council site would include that. But we would be the best bet. You're right.
Thank you.
Thank you. To close, Mr. Schimminger.
A long time ago, we had a program in New York State called the Empire Zone Program. The program has now ended. In the summer of 2013, when the Startup New York program was rising, it was said that this program, Startup New York, will not be like the Empire Zone program. This program will be accountable, this program will be transparent, and when the law was made in 2013, there were clear and explicit provisions in the law for accountability. One of those elements was an annual report by the agency. Also in that report were requirements of detailed applications from the applicants and annual reports from the participating companies. I got a very strange gift on Christmas Eve this year when I saw that there was an emergency rule promulgated by your agency saying that the annual report, there's been none so far, that the annual report due for 2014 would not come out until April 1st of next year. We'll have a budget adopted by then. And so I wanted to ask about that. And it's not just in the interest of transparency and accountability, but we in the legislature have a choice to make in that the governor has proposed to us that we take $50 million out of NYPA, a sweep, $50 million out of NYPA, and put it toward a promotion campaign for Startup New York. But we don't have the annual report which would tell us in detail and specificity, not just jobs that are committed to, but jobs that are created. It would tell us a whole host of other things. So my question is, what was the reason for delaying the annual report? Perhaps we have to assume that there was some bad news in the annual report. Maybe the companies were not submitting their required annual reports to you. We don't know. Why is the report going to be delayed till April 1st? That was worth waiting for.
We had to delay the report because we figured out that in order for it to be a complete picture 2014, and perhaps I admit we should have figured this out sooner, we needed the companies to report in by December 31st and to get us all their year-end data. Now, they have until about January 15th. They have a certain period of time to do that. But we couldn't, we were, you're right, originally required to put this thing out by the end of the year. The program started under law on January 1st, 2014. We didn't start to get real kind of traction and activity till the summer when the schools started to create their spaces, submit their zones, and then in the fall we started to bring in companies. But we wanted to paint a complete picture of 2014 and get that right. And for that, we needed to give the companies time in early January to get all of their year-end data so we would have a complete and full picture. So we roll that up now, and we get that report out by April 1st.
That's it. Thank you very much.
So, rather than giving a complete picture, you gave no picture.
Well,
You
we will
could-
give
you
a
could
complete
have-
picture.
You could have gotten whatever was available, put a report together.
As of.
With a little asterisk. It's not complete because we started and we didn't, all our startup stuff took time to get going and so forth.
right.
So how is no information better than partial information? And by the way, you're still required to have it done as of the end of the year. You said it was required, but your agency delayed it. The law didn't change.
Right.
All right, so what would it take to give us what you got now, so we could consider it before the budget is passed?
Well, I have this afternoon, again, first our decision was to issue a complete report as quickly as we could, and that's the decision to push it back to April 1st, to get all the data from all the companies through
No,
the
I
end of the year.
get that, we heard that
All
once.
right, so,
Go
but
ahead.
the other part of your question is I have tried, and I'm certainly, I'd welcome any further questions about it, but I've tried this afternoon to give you the update on Startup New York in terms of what we know now. We talked about the 73 companies.
Ken, how difficult would it be, rather than giving us a verbal update that bounces from one area to the other area, you're going to get us a copy of the list of people that actually benefited from some of these programs, from Startup New York. How difficult would it be to put together what you have right now, to give us at least a partial picture so we see if it's successful or not?
No, we could do that. I mean,
Well,
like I
if
say,
you
it's
could-
been in my notes, and you've heard me say these things, and put it
Yeah.
all on one piece of paper, bring it together,
Okay, and could you do that before you leave the agency?
certainly.
Because we'll have
I'm
less-
not going far away, Senator, but yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Now, you've told me before, I think, that the advertising for 2014 was 25 million?
I think it was 28, and that was in the first part of the year. That's a figure I saw in Cranes this morning that struck me as accurate.
All right, so what justifies the 50 million ask this year for advertising that's coming out of the Power Authority?
Well, one way to think about it is if that first installment of advertising resulted in $104 million of company investment, right, by the 73 companies just in the first few months of the program, you see there's a return that the advertising is resulting in that. The other thing that's important about the advertising is that, and this is with respect, Assemblyman Schumacher brought it up as well, the $50 million. It's my understanding, and I talked to our head of marketing about this last week, when we do the Startup New York advertising, we do it as part of a broader advertising campaign. And so, for example, we've done, and you've probably seen some of these, what we call kind of broad-based business marketing ads, the old Robert De Niro ad we did a couple years ago. Bigger thematic ads where we talk about investments in upstate New York, not startup specific. So we have several campaigns going on, all by the same ad agency down in the city. And so some has been startup specific, some has been more improvements to the business climate, state of opportunity, think about investing in New York, more general business advertising, marketing. And then some, finally, is the I Love New York tourism campaign. It's all part of the
Part of
marketing
the
effort that we
$50
do.
million? The $50 million that's being transferred says it's for the Open for Business marketing campaign. That includes everything, including I Love New York and all that?
Yes, it's this, Open for Business is the umbrella for the whole campaign.
All right, so...
So not all of that would be startup
So
necessarily.
if I asked you last year, the 20-some-odd million was actually just for startup, but the additional amounts would add up to around the same amount for this year, 50 million?
I'd have to look at what we spent on the other two, but we did a
Okay.
whole new I Love New York fall tourism campaign.
Okay.
Winter tourism is up now.
I don't want to lose my time. I got one other area.
But they're all, yes, you're right.
The one area you've been looking for that I told you I'd be asking you about. You're talking about transparency. The New York Film Tax Credit was due a report on January 15th, 2015, to explain where the money went, what projects, the same type of report that we were supposed to get on this other topic. And now recently, hasn't that been delayed again?
Well, that report, you know, you noticed January 15th came and went, and that report will be out this month, in the month of February. It's the first time we've had to do it. I know this is a different explanation, and I'll share it briefly, but, you know, we do quarterly reports on the film production tax credit. We submit those to you every quarter. This, under the law, is a new report we've never had to do before, and it requires us to get outside firms to do the economic analysis of the program. So we did the procurement, we hired two firms, has to be two separate firms, and quite honestly, it was the first time we ever had that done, and again, honestly, it just took more time for us to gather up all the information, because it's a much more in-depth thing, get it to those firms and have them do the work than we had anticipated. But it will be out this month, so only a month late.
Okay, but what I'm getting at, isn't it primarily to tell who got the money, what jobs were created and all that? So you rely on the company to tell them what's happened with their company? To tell you what to put down?
No, the film production and television production companies report all of that to us, and then this report, as required, is an economic analysis of the effectiveness of the program based on that data. So they do economic modeling, but they had never received this kind of information or done a job like that before, frankly. So our staff had to get them all the files, all the info, get it to them. They're working on it now, but I'm told it'll be done this month.
And just a number, if you can think of the number. Well, how much money was used in film tax credits this year?
2014, we issued 123 projects got funding. In other words, the actual credits that went out to, and it was about $500 million.
For how many companies?
Well, for 123 productions. So a production is a feature-length motion picture, a long-running serial television program, a pilot, all
And
the
you're
different...
looking for how much out of this budget?
From last year?
No, for this budget that's in it, that we're looking at now, how many dollars do you want for film tax credits?
Well, the budget, the limit is annually is $420 million. We have banked credits, so we can go a little above that if we have from prior years.
And that's the same amount you're
Every
asking
year.
this year? Okay. And, I had a great question.
I'm sorry,
What was it? Well, we'll have to see you next year.
Okay.
If
You know, I have a
think of
feeling
it,
that in
I'll-
my new capacity, should you and your colleagues elect me
Yeah,
to put me
that's-
there, you'll
that's
ask me
right.
the same question.
Well, probably. Well, I'll, if I think of it, I'll give you a call.
Thank you, please do that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And now the next speaker is Ken Pakulski, Vice President of Government Affairs, the Business Council of New York. On deck is Brian McMahon, Executive Vice President, New York State Economic Development Corporation.
We've been joined by Assemblyman McLaughlin.
Oh, I know, I remember the question.
You can ask me if you want.
Don't ask him.
Okay, Chairman
Whenever you're ready,
DeFrancisco,
yep.
members of the committee, on behalf of the Business Council, I want to say we always appreciate this opportunity to share our views with you on the executive budget proposal. We've submitted detailed written comments. In my oral testimony today, I'm going to focus on a handful of issues in the executive budget we think that are directly related to state's economic development efforts and those with the greatest potential impact, either positively or negatively, state's overall business climate. Generally speaking, the Business Council strongly supports the parameters of the executive budget. The past 4 state budgets, as approved by the Senate and Assembly, have significantly improved New York's fiscal condition, resulting in balanced budgets and projected operating surpluses. At a time, I would point out that about half of our sister states in the U.S. are facing budget deficits going into fiscal 2016. In 2014 session, we were strong advocates for modernizing and reforming the state's basic business taxes, and they were achieved in the fiscal 2015 budget. That package provided broad-based business tax and compliance relief. It greatly simplified compliance for business for large multi-jurisdictional taxpayers. It will streamline the tax collection and audit processes for the Department of Taxation and Finance as well. It provided tax relief for both large and small manufacturers statewide. It extended the life of net operating losses, assuring the availability of this significant deferred tax assets for many taxpayers. In other words, it was broad-based business tax reform that we think achieved broad-based business climate improvements in New York State. This year, we generally support the proposal that was advanced by the de Blasio administration to bring New York City's general corporate tax into conformance with the updated Article 9 corporate franchise tax. And unlike the last time we did this, to do a major New York City tax conformance piece, this is being done relatively quickly. Full compliance in 3 years, or in conformance in 3 years, compared to the 10-year phase-in that was adopted as part of the last New York City conformance package. We do have 2 significant concerns with that New York City conformance proposal, however. First, the city's revised business tax would retain a capital-based tax calculation. As you know, corporate franchise tax is typically calculated 4 ways. You pay the highest of the 4. It's keeping this capital-based calculation, which is being phased out of the state corporate franchise tax, and increasing the maximum liability under this calculation from $1 million to $10 million per taxpayer per year. This approach will adversely and disproportionately impact taxpayers with significant physical or financial capital located in New York City, but with cyclical changes in their net income. We believe that any tax structure that penalizes employers for having a significant presence in the jurisdiction is bad tax policy, and we oppose that feature of the city's conformance bill. Secondly, the city's conformance bill adopts the same type of economic nexus test for the New York City's business tax. This means that a business not physically located in the city would be subject to the city's business taxes if it had more than $1 million in receipts from activities in the city. Now, in the context of promoting a better New York State business climate, doing this at a city level we think sends the wrong message. And since this provision generates relatively little additional revenues for the city, and because it would adversely impact business taxpayers located elsewhere in the state, we recommend it be dropped from the conformance package. Generally speaking, though, it tracks the state changes pretty closely, and we think it's generally speaking a very useful idea. Moving on, we agree with the governor's call for a significant $1.5 billion economic development package targeting upstate New York. Upstate is facing widespread economic challenges. As an example, 40 of the 52 upstate counties have yet to see private sector employment return to their pre-2008 recession levels. Therefore, we think this upstate initiative is very timely. However, we also believe that it should be more broadly accessible to significant projects located anywhere in upstate New York, and not just limited to projects in 3 of 8 upstate regions, as proposed in the executive budget. In general, we support additional reforms included in the executive budget to the state's brownfield cleanup program that we think will make the program more accessible and more efficient. As an example, we support the new expedited cleanup process for projects agreeing to forego access to tax credit eligibility and the inclusion of state Superfund Class 2 sites in the program, as well as the 10-year extension of its cleanup and redevelopment tax credits. In our view, the program has proved to be a very effective economic development program and an efficient one as well. It's produced more than $8 billion in private sector spending on the cleanup and redevelopment of contaminated, abandoned, and underutilized properties. Its cost effectiveness is 7 to 1, looking just at the direct expenditures on cleanup and redevelopment. As detailed in our written comments submitted today, though, we think some of the specific provisions in the executive budgets are counterproductive and unnecessary, especially the proposal that would preclude the tangible property redevelopment credit for properties whose uncontaminated value is more than the projected site cleanup costs. We think this is going to have a particular adverse project on underutilized, contaminated, but once used industrial properties in upstate New York. By far the most significant new business cost that would result from the executive budget proposal is its minimum wage increase. As an economic development strategy, we think it's a bad idea and counterproductive. Maybe well-intentioned, but it will have unintended adverse job impacts. The proposal would result in about a $4,200 per job per year cost increase statewide on a full-time equivalency basis, and nearly $6,600 per job per year cost increase in New York City. When you consider the direct payroll cost increases as well as the resultant increases in federal Social Security and Medicaid taxes, state-level unemployment insurance taxes, and workers' compensation coverage. To accommodate these increased costs, businesses have limited choices. They can increase prices, divert resources from other purposes such as capital investments, try to become even more efficient, or frankly purchase less labor, whether that means reduction in the hours or elimination of jobs for some workers. A recent study in New York showed that the 2005 minimum wage increases resulted in about a 12% reduction in jobs for young, low-skilled workers who are among the intended beneficiaries of a minimum wage increase. And while relatively few employers and employees were affected directly by the 2013 minimum wage increases, this year's proposal would affect far more employers, far more business sectors, and far more occupational categories. I want to conclude with two suggestions of additional issues that should be considered as you're adopting the 2016 final state budget. First, use a portion of the windfall funds, excuse me, to do a final repeal of the so-called Section 18 energy assessment. This assessment is in effect, if not in statute, is a gross receipts tax, will impose about $173 million in add-on a cost to power customers in 2015, another $134 million in 2016. Ironically, since the state repealed its statutory energy gross receipts tax in 2000, which had about $150 million in direct tax relief when that was done, the state has added more than $1 billion in annual energy assessments, mostly through non-statutory means. Getting rid of the 18A assessment for good would be a good step toward reversing that trend. Second, with all the additional funding in this budget for capital projects, and again, the stated interest in improving the state's economic climate and promoting capital investment by the private sector, we can think of no substantive reason to not do scaffold law reform as part of the Article 7 language in this year's budget. Our written comments touch on a number of other issues in the budget, including a few things in terms of corporate tax technical amendments we'd like to see addressed. But that ends my oral presentation today. Welcome any comments or questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Krueger.
Thank you, Ken. A number of the issues you've raised in your testimony, I completely already understand. On the $1.5 billion economic development program targeting the 3 upstate winning regions and the 4 upstate losing regions in the scenario that's been laid out, and you suggest that that's not the way to do it, which I would agree with, but are there any standards being applied to what are good economic development proposals and what are not particularly good economic proposals within the context of 3 $500 million pots of money? Do you know?
For this proposal, it's not been detailed yet. I mean, I think I would expect it to look a lot like what was done in the regional council process. They look at projects of significant regional impact, projects that will have regional job and investment effects, projects that will have expected return on investment, both in terms of new jobs, new family income, new tax revenues. Those are not proposed in the Article 7 language now.
So you just sat through many questions around Startup New York and Empire Zone, old things and issues of shirt changing that we used to talk about a lot. Are you concerned, the Business Council, that in these winner and loser regions, people will just pick up and move existing companies from one county to another in order to get in on these new tax credits or tax breaks?
I doubt that would happen. I mean, most statutory programs specifically preclude credits for relocation, and where it's allowed, it's only when there's a valid economic purpose that's agreed to by both the leaving and recipiatory community. I suspect that, and I don't know exactly what types of projects will be proposed. I've reached out to members of the Business Council who sit on regional council boards to get their sense. I think it's a wide variety. As we've seen in the the Red Seas process, most of this money does not go directly to businesses. A lot of the money goes to support structures, local infrastructure projects, local job training projects, things of that nature, which promote the interests of a number of businesses rather than aiding one business alone. So I'm not sure that's going to be the focus of this program either, just like it hasn't been the focus of the Red Seas funding.
In your testimony, you didn't read it, but looking at it, you were continuing to propose phasing out the Section 8 assessment, which also my conference has supported now for several years. But are you aware that somewhere within this budget is language that allows for the retrofitting of 2 upstate coal plants to become gas plants, and then adding $140 million in assessments to upstate consumers' utility bills to pay for that? Does your organization have a position on that kind of deal?
We've raised concerns in other settings about using mandatory power purchase agreements to repower power plants in locations where the market isn't asking for them. So we have real concerns with those types of approaches. It's an ARTA. It is serving a very localized, oftentimes a local real property tax purpose, rather than making strategic investments in the state's energy grid. So we would share those concerns. I'm not familiar with the specific proposal you mentioned. Other settings we've opposed those types of proposals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyman Butler.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman Farrell, and thank you, Mr. Bukowski. I just wanted to go back to what Senator Kruger was talking about, and I was interested to hear you say, because I have to agree with you. I think when we talk about regional economic development projects under this program, the Red Sea program, I think we're stretching the definition of what economic development is. In other words, in my view and the view of many that I've talked to, there are infrastructure projects and other projects being funded that the connection between pure economic development is being stretched a bit. My question is, and again, to piggyback off what Senator Kruger said, yes, with the competition element, with only 3 upstate areas winning in the funding, you're going to have losers. But our contention is that even within a region, if there is a dominant county or a dominant city or a dominant area, they can load the committee up and therefore still get a majority of the funding. So even if your region wins, I think there is a concern among some of the smaller counties that money is not filtering into every place where it's needed. And I'm not saying that infrastructure projects and those kinds of things are bad. I think they need to be done. So with that thought in mind, you say there has to be a better way, rather than just stacking up economic development programs. and you say there needs to be a better way. I have a resolution from one of my counties suggesting that maybe that money ought to be simply distributed on a per capita basis, based on population. Let the local community make the decision on how that money would be best used. I wondered if you would have any thoughts on that particular proposal.
Well, I'd like to see it. It depends on whether you're distributing on a county, municipality, how's it?
Well, I would imagine it would be county by county. I think that was the intent of their resolution, county by county, per capita.
Well, I guess my concern would be, and one of the reasons why we're hearing from our members, they're concerned about a program that only awards within 3 of 8
Right.
regions.
Right.
Is that not every project is limited to a single jurisdiction. If there's a project that would include development efforts in, say, university campuses in central New York and adjoining region, we don't think those should be precluded by the way the funding is distributed. So that would be our concern. We think by making it project-specific rather than jurisdiction-specific, you'd have the best chance of getting the best bang for the money, because the most meritorious projects would rise to the top.
But are there projects funded now that border in separate regions, or are they all within each region? I mean, you have that division, don't you? You wouldn't have two regional committees both putting into a single pot for a project, or would you?
You mean under Red Sea? I missed the first part of that. So.
Well, as it's constructed now, if you get funding, that funding stays within your region. In other words, one region wouldn't partner with another region and both dump into a single pot for a project that cuts across regional lines.
Well, the big difference is under Red Seas, every region gets funding.
Right.
So you could match from one region to the next if you had a project that crossed over. Here you'd have neighboring, bordering regions, one that had resources and one that had zero under this program. So
But I guess
you can accommodate those types of inter-regional projects, and they have been accommodated under the Red Seas program.
Okay. Well, I guess as a philosophical question, but the intent of this was to have these decisions driven locally by putting several counties together and cities and regions. You have a committee that is making decisions for your local community on your behalf and then submitting them to Albany for, God knows, some secret process that occurs there. So I don't know if local communities are really being represented and really having a piece in that. But I guess this is more of a philosophical question. I just wondered about your opinion on that.
Yeah,
So
I think we share the concern to make sure
Yeah.
that the best projects get funded.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Further?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next speaker is Brian McMahon, New York State Economic Development Council. On deck, I guess, is Janet Silver sitting in for Joe Wiederhorn, and Ross Fulmer, they'll be next. Okay, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see the 10 minutes, and I don't plan on taking more than 50 or 60. I'm Brian McMahon, Executive Director of the New York State Economic Development Council. We represent local economic development agencies around the state, as well as private sector firms involved in providing services to local projects. Let me just go to the 4 issues that I want to talk about today. The governor's budget includes several proposals that would direct funds into regional economic development initiatives. The largest of these is the $1.5 billion Upstate Revitalization Fund. Our organization commends Governor Cuomo for committing this amount of bank settlement funds for regional economic development transformational projects. We believe there is an important investment role in economic development for state and local government, and this proposal has the potential to leverage significant private sector investment and job creation. Governor has proposed awarding these funds on a competitive basis from among 7 REDCs, with Western New York and downstate regions excluded. The winners would be awarded $500 million each. Unlike REDC funds, URF money is not reauthorized on an annual basis. It is a one-time award. Consequently, as has been stated throughout this afternoon, the 4 losing regions would never get another opportunity to challenge for these funds in spite of having both economic needs and opportunities for such funds. We believe the URF should be competitive on a project basis instead of on a regional basis. We fully agree with the governor that the fund should be awarded to regionally transformative projects that lead to a significant increase in private sector jobs and investment. We would place a priority on capacity building initiatives such as infrastructure, technology park, and shovel-ready site development, development of cluster-based workforce initiatives, urban core revitalization projects, and incentives for large private sector high-technology projects. Our organization also supports the proposed new $10 million employee incentive program at ESD. The program would utilize the tax credit capacity of the Excelsior Jobs Credit Program and would equal 50% of eligible training costs up to $10,000 per employee receiving eligible training. Eligible businesses would have to make a minimum capital investment in New York of $1 million to qualify. Importantly, this program would train workers or upgrade their skills for available jobs in strategic industry sectors. Meeting the technical worker needs of businesses that are investing and growing in New York State is a key competitive factor. New York has few programs that can be targeted to meet individual business needs. Those that do exist are not administered by the state's economic development arm. This proposal, while modest in dollar amount, would allow ESD to meet technical worker needs of an attraction or expansion project as it negotiates incentives to leverage capital investment. Often, meeting skilled worker needs is more important than financial incentives in attracting facility expansion projects. This is an important program and deserves your support. We do not support the governor's budget proposal that would require approval by ESD and Tax and Finance for IDAs to convey state tax exemptions. We believe these proposals would result in the loss of considerable control of local economic development to the state, shift local project decision-making from local governments to Albany, infringe on New York's long history of home rule, delay the economic development process by requiring additional approvals by ESD and the Department of Tax and Finance before an IDA could convey these exemptions, and certainly it will add uncertainty to businesses as to the tax benefits they could receive for investing in our communities. Any one of these outcomes would harm local economic development efforts. Part W, where this provision is contained of the revenue bill, would also prohibit the awarding of state tax exemptions if a project is deemed to compete with another business in the community. Economic development organizations across the state work every day to create clusters of industries in their communities. Industry clusters connect supplier chains to key customers and establish networks of talent for which businesses in the targeted clusters compete. This drives up wages and contributes to a strong tech-based local economy. This provision could prevent, for example, an IDA from assisting a bioscience firm in Buffalo, Hudson Valley, or New York City, areas that are developing strong clusters in this sector. The governor's office recognizes the importance of industry clusters, which is why it has directed regional economic development councils to include cluster initiatives in this year's round of REDC funding. This proposal conflicts with that directive. Part W would require IDAs to complete its approval process before seeking permission from ESD to provide state tax exemptions. ESD could approve in 45 days or send back the application if it desires any additional information. And this would delay the economic development process by a minimum of 45 days, preventing IDAs from responding to investment and job opportunities on a timely basis. Part W would add enforcement powers to the Authority Budget Office that were never contemplated and that would apply only to IDAs. The ABO is established to be an independent overseer of all state and local public authorities. This proposal inserts the ABO into the IDA statute and imposes unique enforcement powers on one class of public authorities. The proposal would also impose clawback requirements on IDAs that are more restrictive than those contained in ESDC incentive contracts or that are included in the Excelsior Jobs Program regulations. So, just as New York is one state but has 10 economic development regions, each region has many different economies within it. For example, the economy of Cattaraugus County is vastly different than the economy in Erie County, yet they both are in the Western New York Economic Development Region. The economy in Madison County is very different than Onondaga County, and Otsego County is quite different than Oneida County. IDAs exist to respond to the unique economic challenges and opportunities of the local communities that they serve. And finally, this proposal conflicts with a bottom-up model of economic development, which New York has been moving toward and which we support. We urge you to reject these proposals. The governor's budget would extend the brownfield cleanup program for an additional 7 years. It would allow projects admitted into the program to receive certificates of completion by the close of 2025, and it would also restrict eligibility criteria and limit expenses that qualify for both the remediation and tangible property credits. Our organization strongly supports the extension of the program for 10 years, which would provide certainty to program participants and communities and residents adversely affected by the brownfield sites. We would recommend a few revisions. Specifically, one of the qualifying criteria for the tangible property credit is that the project must be upside down, meaning the cost of investigation and cleanup must exceed the appraised value of property absent environmental contamination. The environmental condition of property affects its market and appraised value and should be taken into account when determining if a project is upside down or not. Sites that are not upside down will not otherwise qualify for the tangible property credit, and losing the tangible property credit will cause some willing to take on such contaminated sites to then look for other easier to develop sites, including greenfields, thus encouraging sprawl and leaving contamination and public health threats in the ground. Also, another eligibility criteria is that the project must be in an end zone. Designation of an end zone is limited to eligible census tracts with a poverty rate of at least 20% according to the 2000 census and an unemployment rate of at least 125% of the New York State average. We would recommend changing the definition of an end zone to include a census tract where the poverty rate is 20% or has an unemployment rate of at least 125% of the New York State average. This will allow for additional contaminated sites that threaten public health to potentially be eligible for the tangible property credit, thus encouraging more private sector remediation of contaminated sites. Let me close just by mentioning one other proposal in the governor's budget, his broadband expansion. Governor's budget proposes to invest $500 million in broadband expansion, which would be matched by private sector internet providers. The proposal would require not just the provision of broadband, but the deployment of high-speed broadband. Broadband is an economic development infrastructure requirement, and the availability of high-speed broadband is an important competitive factor. Many areas of the state are not being served because of low population density, which makes the investment in broadband economically unfeasible for private providers. This proposal would provide an economic incentive to close the digital divide where it exists in the state. Those areas not served or underserved by high-speed broadband have little opportunity to compete for business investment. Importantly, these areas, which may otherwise have great quality of life, cannot attract entrepreneurs or other professionals without high-speed broadband capacity. This is important and rapidly growing economic development opportunity, includes professionals engaged in R&D, the arts and entertainment, and internet-based businesses. This is an important initiative. We urge your support. There are a few other issues that are in the written testimony, but that concludes my oral presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Senator Krueger.
Afternoon, Brian.
How are you?
Thank you for reminding us that we did zero out the taxes for manufacturing last year.
Yes.
And can you tell us what kind of increased pattern we've seen in any manufacturing in New York State? In new companies or growth in companies?
Well, the number of manufacturing employment is down. I mean, we just recently enacted the reduction or the elimination of the manufacturing tax. And frankly, we work hard at telling that story. And we wish that more promotion of that would be made elsewhere. And getting that getting that across sometimes is hard to cut through some of the advertising that is going on. But we think fundamentally that action that you took last year, long-term, is going to pay off significantly.
So when you said manufacturing's down, from a year ago, manufacturing's down?
Yes, right.
And
Certainly,
you think,
certainly upstate, that's true.
and there's very little downstate. Well, there's different kinds of manufacturing. So you actually think that a marketing campaign to make sure people who currently have manufacturing companies in New York State know that if they were to expand, you know, there's all these different kinds of programs we heard about
I think
today,
companies
and there's not, you know, there's a zero tax rate.
I think companies that are already here, because they pay their taxes, they know what the impact is. I think we need to do a better job of conveying this to out-of-state manufacturers and international manufacturers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyman Schimminger.
Let me read back a little testimony here. It says, in regard to the Upstate Initiative, however, we also believe it should be broadly accessible to significant projects across upstate and not limited to projects in just 3 of 8 upstate regions. That sounds a lot like your testimony, Brian, but it was actually Ken Pekulski's testimony, so I think you all are on the similar wavelength on this thing. You went beyond what Ken Pekulski said, and you reminded us that this is maybe not once in a lifetime, but it's a one-time, very big award. It's a contest that will run for 2.5 months, and 3 regions are going to win, and a lot of regions are going to lose. Thank you for reminding us that this is a very high-stakes contest. And we don't think it's going to be repeated, do we?
I mean, we don't
Never
know
know.
what future settlements might be.
Might be some future settlements.
All set?
Yep.
I happen to be against the competition. We've got economic development projects. I think it should be used for infrastructure on some type of equitable basis, whether it's roads through CHIPS or whatever. But having said that, a competition of 3 is better than no competition for 1, right?
Now, there was a great need in Western New York. The governor perceived that.
We don't need anything, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talk about this, I think our vision would be that this would kind of act as a traditional economic development program with criteria defining what a transformational project is, and have good projects come up organically, possibly through the regional councils. That's fine. I think they should come up through the regional councils. I think they should be consistent with regional strategic plans. But at $1.5 billion, it's a lot of money, and to get it out the door on a competitive basis in 3 months, I think is ambitious, and I think that you would end up at the end of the day leaving an awful lot of good transformational projects unfunded.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Janet Silver. Speakers, Janet Silver and Ross Fromer of the Associated Medical Schools of New York.
Good afternoon, Senator DeFrancisco and Assemblyman Farrell and members of the legislature. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony today on behalf of AMSNY. My name is Janet Silver, and I'm with Hinman Straub. Joe Wiederhorn, the president and CEO of AMSNY, sends her apologies but was unable to be here today due to the weather. The Associated Medical Schools of New York is a consortium of 16 public and private medical schools in the state. The mission is to promote high quality and cost-efficient health care by ensuring outstanding medical education, care, and research. Joining me today is Ross Fromer, Vice President of Government and Community Affairs from Columbia University Medical Center. You have a copy of Ms. Wiederhorn's written testimony that also includes a lot of statistics and backgrounds on the programs I'm going to discuss today. But for the point of time, I'm going to summarize and just discuss 2 priorities of AMS. The first is AMSNY's diversity in medicine programs, and the second is funding to support STAR researchers. First, let me just take a minute to talk about the diversity programs. While not an economic development program, we thought it was important to highlight the success of this program and also include our concerns regarding the governor's budget proposal. AMS diversity programs have been in operation for almost 25 years. The programs include the post-baccalaureate program at SUNY Buffalo, 3 master's degree programs that are currently held at SUNY Upstate Medical University, Stony Brook School of Medicine, and New York College of Medicine, as well as a variety of programming for students in college as well as high school. The post-baccalaureate program has had amazing success. 93% of the students who enter the post-baccalaureate program have entered medical school. 87% of those matriculated into medical school, and 55% of the students entered primary care residencies. The master's programs that began in 2008 have also had an amazing success rate of 93% of the students who completed the program have entered medical school. Remember, these are students that would not have entered medical school otherwise. To be accepted into the program, students cannot be accepted to any medical school in the country and are referred into the program by one of the medical schools that has identified them as having potential and through academic enrichment, mentoring, research, could successfully complete medical school. Students who successfully complete the programs are guaranteed admission to the medical school that referred them. The governor's budget this year is proposing to eliminate the direct appropriation that supports the AMS&Y diversity programs and is proposing to lump this program with 7 other programs and reduce overall funding by 15%. The proposal would also enable the Department of Health to establish criteria and a potential competitive process to award the funds. Based on the outcomes and success of these programs, AMS&Y believes it could potentially compete for funding under the proposal. The problem, however, is the program enrolls students in the spring and programming starts on July 1st. The majority of the funding supports students' stipends because students cannot work. The uncertainty regarding the actual amount of funding that would result in not knowing how many students could enroll would require the programs not to start a new class on July 1st. We urge the legislature to reject this proposal and provide direct funding for individual programs. In addition, AMS&Y is requesting funding in the amount of $2 million that would restate the full amount of funding and enable AMS to serve a full complement of students and also reactivate programs such as MCAT prep programs that they have had to eliminate over the years due to budget cuts. More importantly, and on point for this hearing, last year Ms. Wiederhorn testified regarding a growing concern of the medical schools related to increased competition from other states to recruit STAR researchers. At that time, the deans had identified a problem on the horizon that today is unfortunately a reality. STAR researchers from New York State medical schools are being poached to institutions in Texas, California, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Florida. I highlight these states in particular because the states are making significant investments into biomedical research. Each state has invested over $1 billion. Texas and California, for instance, have invested over $3 billion. Let me take a moment just to highlight Texas. Since 2011, Texas has spent over $240 million on the recruitment of top researchers from out of state. During that period of time, Texas has successfully recruited 12 researchers from New York. Texas did not only recruit that researcher, but recruited the researcher, their lab staff, their NIH funding, private philanthropy, as well as good-paying jobs that came from many of our New York State cities. Texas has not only invested in the direct support for researchers, but during this time has also spent over $1 billion in new labs, research facility, and direct support for research through grants. As previously stated, Texas is not the only state. 5 other states have added recently by enacting investments and are actively recruiting New York State researchers. In your packets, you have details on what each state has been doing as well as the dollars behind each program. New York has been a leader in biomedical research, currently 3rd largest recipient of NIH funding. However, increased state-supported competition is making it more and more difficult for New York to continue to be a leader. New York's medical schools are playing offense, continually recruiting top researchers, and at the same time playing defense, retaining our STAR researchers that have made tremendous impacts on healthcare in New York State, as well as our local economies with job creation, patents, royalties, and spin-offs. New York State medical schools need the assistance of New York State to remain competitive. As demonstrated by the researchers who recruited to Texas, loss of star researchers is no longer a concern but a reality. The medical schools cannot be expected to compete with large state-funded programs. New York is home to 16 medical schools. Locally, the economic impact of research can be seen in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. Last year, with the support of both houses, the final budget included statutory language to restart the NYSTAR faculty development program and authorized over $600,000 in support for retention and recruitment of researchers. The medical schools were thankful for the support, but need increased financial support in order for New York to remain competitive. This year, AMSNY is requesting $50 million in support for the FDP program. $50 million will enable the medical schools to compete, but will also demonstrate to other states that New York is committed to research infrastructure that has a tremendous impact on our state. Mr. Fromer will now provide more detail on the faculty development program and also an example of its success.
Thank you, Janet. I just want to talk briefly about Dr. Rudy Leibel, because Dr. Leibel is a perfect example of how successful the faculty development program has been in the past. He is an internationally recognized expert in diabetes and obesity research and has worked his entire life to find ways how to prevent this debilitating disease. Frankly put, in the world of science, he is a rock star. Dr. Leibel joined the staff at Columbia, the faculty at Columbia, in 1997, and from the beginning was very successful in not only moving science forward, but bringing in grants, philanthropic, and private sector support. In 2002, a highly respected, well-resourced medical school from another state made an effort to recruit Dr. Leibel away from Columbia and New York. They made a very attractive offer, but fortunately, we were able to convince him to stay. The primary reason we were able to do that is because we received a faculty development grant from what was then NYSTAR, and this allowed us the resources to convince Dr. Leibel to stay in New York at Columbia. The FDP grant was for $150,000 a year for 5 years for a total state investment of $750,000. According to ESD, Dr. Leibel has generated over $80 million in economic activity since 2002 in federal grants and private sector support. Today, Dr. Leibel is directly responsible for over 100 good-paying jobs. These are career positions in science and administration, and this does not even include the general campus support jobs like maintenance, security, and animal care, which his lab indirectly supports. These are jobs that not only offer a good salary, but also offer retirement benefits, health insurance, and educational support for employees and families, i.e. the kind of jobs that not only allow people to support themselves, but allow them to move up the economic ladder and create strong communities. So in 2002, New York State invested $750,000 in Dr. Leibel. 12 years later, the return on that investment is 107 to 1 and counting. My back-of-the-envelope calculations show that in just New York State income tax revenue alone, Dr. Leibel and his employees generate north of $250,000 a year every year. One of the other requirements for the FDP grant was a proven record in technology transfer, and Dr. Leibel has excelled in this area as well. Since receiving the FDP grant, he and his colleagues have filed 13 invention disclosures and received 13 patents. He is the principal investigator in a strategic collaboration on diabetes research between Columbia and AstraZeneca, and has relationships with Regeneron, Eli Lilly, and GlaxoSmithKline as well. I remind you that the original grant was a retention grant designed to prevent Dr. Leibel from leaving. By definition, if not for the FDP grant, all of his work, all of his grants, and the jobs and economic activity that go along with it would be occurring elsewhere and not in New York. I submit that we want more scientists like Dr. Leibel coming to and not leaving New York, and the FDP has a proven track record of making this happen. He may be the poster child for how successful this program has been, but there are countless other examples of FDP grant recipients succeeding at science in New York. Upstate, downstate, SUNY private, it doesn't matter. And I should note that SUNY Buffalo and SUNY Stony Brook were major recipients of this grant. Research institutions across the state can also tell you stories of big fish that got away. Top scientists with significant funding came very close to accepting a position in New York, but for whatever reason, we could not seal the deal. With a little help from the state, many of these recruits could be in New York right now, doing research, bringing in grants, and creating jobs. Each time we lose a scientist, each time we fail to recruit someone, it's leaving money and jobs on the table. President Obama's federal budget, which he released last week, called for a $1 billion increase in funding for the National Institutes of Health. I can tell you, while there is a lot of division in Washington right now, one area where you see strong bipartisan, bicameral agreement is funding for biomedical research and the NIH. So there's a good chance that this money will appear in the final budget. As you are no doubt aware, New York is a net donor state to the federal government. We pay far more in taxes than we receive in benefits from Washington. One of the biggest exceptions to this rule, though, is research funding. New York has 6.2% of the population, yet we receive just under 9% of the NIH funding, extramural funding. But how are we going to maintain this stature? How are we going to keep research dollars coming to our medical schools? As Ms. Silver mentioned, we used to rank number 2 in NIH funding. Now we lost out to Massachusetts, and other states are nipping at our heels. What are we going to do to keep talent and the research and the jobs here? The legislature has done a very good job, done a lot of work in this area, as has Governor Cuomo and previous governors. But for the most part, state efforts have focused on technology transfer and private sector development. This is important, but it's not going to happen without ideas and without talent. That is why the FDP is so crucial. The program attracts and keeps scientific talent in New York. That talent moves science forward and leads to ideas, that can become the next great discovery, the next great blockbuster drug, all the while generating grant revenue and creating jobs. You can't get good output unless you have good input. So I strongly urge you to include significant funding, $50 million, for the FDP in the budget. Let's continue to make New York a place where scientists want to be. Don't let our talent get away. Let's work to ensure that the next Rudy Leibel, or better yet, Rudy Leibels, choose to do their research right here in New York. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll group all my questions together. Did you ask the governor for faculty development program funding? Did he reject it? Did he give any reasons for rejecting it?
Yes, we've had conversations with the governor's office since last budget. At the end of the day, we were told that there was a lack of funding and initiatives, but they are supportive of the program, also understand the impact it has had on the economies, especially upstate, as well as the clusters in New York City.
Thank you.
Did you give them that doctor an apartment?
To be honest, Chairman Farrell, I do not know where Dr. Leibel lives. I do know he is a resident of Manhattan.
Yeah, I'd like to know what floor is he on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there's been a gap in this issue concerning residencies. Remember, we had great talks that they were going to foreign medical schools. At some point, I'd like to talk to you about that. See what the status is, what you've done, what I can do.
We'd be
All right,
happy to have
thank
that
you.
conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Jen O'Connor, New York State Director of Ready Nation. On deck is Jan Chesterton. Jan Chesterton's on deck, New York State Hospitality and Tourism Association.
Good afternoon. Ready Nation is a national organization. Our advisory board includes CEOs and former CEOs from Procter & Gamble, from Macy's, Boeing, and Hanover Capital. In New York State, there are 150 members statewide. You have my written testimony and some handouts, so I will keep this pretty brief. But if we really want to change the trajectory for economic development in New York State, we need to change our perspective of what economic development truly is. While it's certainly investing in startups, small businesses, and new technologies, it's also investing in infrastructure. And I don't mean buildings, I mean human capital. That means today's workforce, working parents, and tomorrow's, our young children. We need to start listening to Nobel Prize-winning economist James Heckman, whose chart on the inverse relationship between brain growth and public expenditures is included in your packet. We're not the only group of business leaders who get this. This position is supported by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Manufacturing Institute, and the Business Roundtable. But I worry that we talk to the wrong people. We talk to the human services people, we talk to the education people. I think we should be talking to the economic development people. Here's why. For every dollar spent on utilities, the return on investment is $1.53. For manufacturing, it's $1.72. For retail, $1.83. For every dollar spent in the early learning sector, the return on investment is $1.86. And that money stays in the community, unlike the other sectors. I'm not saying don't invest in construction, but invest here too. If you want to support the workforce, help prevent the absenteeism that costs this country $3 billion every year. Help provide high-quality childcare so that parents can go to work knowing that their children are safe and learning. My members support strategies along the education continuum, strategies that will close the skills gap, multiple pathways to graduation, career and technical assistance programs, extended school days. And if invested in adequately, these initiatives will help us close that skills gap, which is 350,000 mid-level skilled jobs by 2020. But early learning can help eliminate the skills gap. The data on education outcomes is also in your packet. Only 5 of the 10 regional economic development councils includes early learning as a priority. My request today is that you influence your regional economic development council and ensure that not only is early learning included, but that thoughtful, meaningful investments are made. And that when you look at the funding available to you to allocate, you consider early learning as an economic development strategy. I'm not going to take a position on Startup New York, but I will tell you that if there was an initiative entitled Start Early New York, the dividends would be huge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you. It's not the nature of your testimony, it's the lateness of the hour why there's no questions. Okay, Jan Chesterton, New York State Hospitality and Tourism Association. On deck, excuse me, on deck, the featured and last speaker is Christian Vogue. Is that close? Close. How about let me know what it is? Okay.
Thank you. My name is Jan Chesterton, and I'm president of the New York State Hospitality and Tourism Association, and I also act as the administrator for the Tourism Industry Coalition of New York. I'd like to thank Chairman Farrell and DeFrancisco and all the members of the legislature here today for allowing me to testify, specifically as it relates to tourism programs within the 2015-2016 executive budget proposal. Tourism industry in New York State is unparalleled with its combination of creating and maintaining jobs and providing the state with a return on its investment like no other industry can offer. Tourism is part of each region of the state, providing employment at all levels, from management to entry level. This past December, the state awarded nearly $12 million in tourism-related projects through the 4th round of the Regional Economic Development Council process. We remain an avid supporter of the REDCs, as they have been a proven source for tourism promotion and marketing all across the state. As we move forward and begin discussions on the 2015-16 state budget, we hope tourism funding for all programs is preserved. Tourism is a needed investment because the industry acts as a partner with the state, providing jobs and revenue. Furthermore, we strongly support a 5th round of the funding for the REDCs as part of this state's budget. Given its proven track record as a revenue source for the state and local governments, as well as a job generator, tourism is not only a wise investment, but a critical one that yields unmatched as well as sustained returns on the state's economy. That is why we as an industry support at least maintaining, if not increasing, the funding levels for the Tourism Matching Grants Program, as well as the I Love New York program. The funding, which has been maintained at the same levels over the past several years of the budget, has given the industry the reliance and sustainability it needs to grow and market and promote all the destinations and attractions of the state. Through the Tourism Matching Grant Program, which is an aid-to-locality legislative program and is matched locally dollar for dollar by the industry, funding is used to market the regional tourism attractions. The numbers and success of these matching grants statewide is amazing. Direct tourism employment grew 1.9% in 2013. 1 in every 12 jobs in New York State is sustained by tourism. Over 900,000 jobs were sustained by tourism activity in 2014. and tourism spending generated $95.4 billion in total business sales in 2013. The benefits collected in the form of state and local taxes alone are worth the investment, especially considering the limited resources the state can invest. Tourism is an investment that produces revenues and jobs. Tourism is now the fourth largest employer in New York State on the basis of direct tourism employment jumping over both finance and insurance in 2014. The industry has done its part to maximize the funding of I Love New York program, and the advertising spots of the I Love New York brand that were successful for the industry must continue to expand in 2015. Most importantly, these two programs were a major part of the tourism economy, reaching a new high in 2014. Additionally, in 2014, funding for the programs such as Market New York and Taste New York were allocated for regional marketing and promotion across the state and were huge successes. We continue to be encouraged by the governor's commitment to tourism. After all, it's the marketing and promotion that will bring the visitors back to the state. And one final comment. In 2013, Governor Cuomo signed legislation increasing the state's minimum wage from $7.25 to $9 at the end of 2015 to better align with the cost of living. This year, the governor has proposed raising the statewide minimum wage yet again to $10.50 by the end of 2016. Additionally, because New York City has one of the highest costs of living, the governor also proposed raising the city's minimum wage to $11.50. As an industry, we certainly support a fair minimum wage, but our business members know that these types of increases negatively impact job creation and business growth across the state. Therefore, NYSHTA remains concerned with the governor's proposal is too steep, too soon, in too short a period, and that'll result will be fewer jobs created, potential job losses, and it will adversely impact both small businesses statewide. I want to thank you again for the opportunity. I'm pleased to testify before you this afternoon, and I certainly offer our association as a partner to maximize in the state's economy.
Senator Kruger.
Thank you. Do you break down your data by region or county? I'm just curious. One, does your tourism dollars include people from New York City who go and spend their summer in the Adirondacks, or is it only from outside of the state of New York into New York State?
There is some data collected on international and domestic visitors, and it is broken down by regional, but in terms of interstate travel, I'm not exactly sure. I could probably look into that for you.
Okay. Does your association take a position on whether the gambling that is growing in the state through casinos will increase tourism dollars or shift dollars from being spent now in X location moving to Y location?
That has been obviously an ongoing conversation for several years amongst our association and our members, and we've actually don't have a position on that, and we chose not to because there are certain pockets of the state, while some may benefit, others may not. And as a statewide lodging and tourism association, we felt it was best to what may be good for some may not be for others. So,
do you know if other states that have had casinos have data like that from their tourism trade associations? I'd be curious to know whether there has been research done in other states in the country.
there may have been. I'm not familiar with any. And again, it's not something that we would have delved into to see how other states reacted. So,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Questions? No, thank you.
Thank you very much. New York Water Environmental Association, Chrétien Verge. That better?
Closer.
Closer. So it's better.
Verge.
Verge, okay.
I'm going to move this and take some of this great municipal tap water.
Delicious tap water. Oh, Chrétien.
Okay.
It is Chrétien.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today regarding the role of public wastewater infrastructure in economic development, the critical condition of this municipal infrastructure, and the potential public health, environmental, and economic consequences from our failure to reinvest in our community's most important assets. My name is Chrétien Verge. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I've dedicated the last 19 years of my life to protecting the public health and the environment for all New Yorkers. I currently have the privilege of serving as superintendent of the Town of Colony's Division of Pure Waters, a special district with the responsibility of collecting and treating sanitary wastewater for the 15th most populous township in the state of New York. I'm also before you today as a representative of the New York Water Environment Association, an organization founded in 1929 by water professionals to serve the best interest of the public by promoting sustainable, clean water management through science, education, and training. Our members include more than 2,500 professionals, from New York State certified operators at small village treatment plants in the Adirondacks to utility executives in New York City, and from professional engineers in Buffalo to scientists in Albany, all dedicated to ensuring safe water for all New Yorkers. While our efforts are directed towards protecting public health and the environment, the secondary effects of wastewater infrastructure investment include unparalleled benefits to New York's economic health. All New York businesses rely on clean water for their employees and their customers, but only 14% of all water consumed is used for flushing toilets, washing clothes, or preparing food. 46% of all water consumed and a proportional amount of wastewater generated is the result of manufacturing processes. 700 gallons of water are required to make one t-shirt. 2,000 gallons of water are required to make one pair of leather shoes, and more than 40,000 gallons of water are required to produce one car. One 12-inch semiconductor wafer requires approximately 2,200 gallons of water to produce, and GlobalFoundries, one of our region's greatest success stories, is expected to consume 5 million gallons of water a day when it reaches full semiconductor production. Professional wastewater utilities throughout New York efficiently collect, transport, and process all of this residential, commercial, and manufacturing waste, ensuring the economic viability of our region. If it were not for the investment in our wastewater infrastructure through Governor Rockefeller's Pure Waters program 50 years ago, a $7.3 billion investment in today's dollars, the infrastructure to collect and treat these wastes would not exist, and our lakes, rivers, and streams would be the lifeless, festering cesspools of the early 1900s. I cannot imagine New York being the greatest destination for international travelers in the United States, or tourism being the state's fourth largest employer if it were not for the benefits provided by modern wastewater treatment. Whether touring Ellis Island, sailing on Lake Erie, fly fishing in the Adirondacks, or boating on the historic Erie Canal, much of New York's tourism relies on the clean, safe water provided by wastewater collection and treatment systems. However, the wastewater infrastructure necessary to provide these economic and recreational activities are at risk. In fact, the American Society of Civil Engineers 2013 report card for America's infrastructure graded our wastewater systems a D, based upon the poor and aging condition of pipes and treatment systems. There are more than 600 wastewater treatment facilities servicing more than 15 million people across New York State. These clean water utilities provide a critical, often overlooked service to our residents, businesses, and visitors. According to a 2008 analysis by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, 30% of the wastewater collection systems in the state are beyond their expected useful life, and the investment needed to maintain current service levels over the next 20 years is $20.2 billion, or an average of $1 billion a year. Infrastructure, including water and sewer systems, represent the largest financial asset for a municipality. Yet over the last 10 years, 10% or less of total local government expenditures have been directed towards infrastructure. This situation is not for a lack of dedication of local governments, but the result of difficult financial situations, state revenue restrictions, and limited resources. But whatever the cause, the result of insufficient reinvestment remains unchanged. Deferred investment leads to more rapid deterioration of assets, reducing service life, and increasing both repair costs and the economic impact to businesses. Economic studies have shown that the investment in infrastructure produces twice as much economic activity as the level of initial spending, and that investment in water and sewer projects in particular generate a greater return on investment and stimulate the regional economy more than other forms of infrastructure. A study by the College of William and Mary found that the short-term direct and indirect impact from public infrastructure investment was $1.92 for every $1 invested, while the long-term marginal projects specific to water and sewer systems yields $6.77 in gross domestic product for every $1 invested. According to the U.S. Treasury, infrastructure investments create good-paying construction and manufacturing jobs and are overwhelmingly supported by the public. It is estimated that a $1 billion investment in water and wastewater infrastructure can create more than 26,000 jobs. And the Department of Commerce estimates that for each job created in the local water and wastewater industry, 3.68 jobs are created in the national economy. The complexity of wastewater infrastructure improvements requires the combined efforts of planners, engineers, equipment manufacturers, distributors, contractors, and operators throughout the supply chain. 70% of the nation's engineering firms and 90% of general and heavy construction firms are small businesses. And as we know, small business is the backbone of the American economy. While our industry applauds the formation of a $3 billion dedicated infrastructure investment fund from the $5.4 billion in bank settlements, we are concerned regarding the loose definition of the word infrastructure in the current description of the fund. Merriam-Webster defines infrastructure as the basic equipment and structures, such as roads and bridges, that are needed for a country, region, or organization to function properly. And we believe that the traditional perception of infrastructure is that of roads, bridges, water, sewer, rail, and the like. However, the current dedicated infrastructure investment fund allocations include $400 million towards hospital corporate restructuring, $150 million for terrorism and emergency preparedness, $150 million for municipal restructuring, and $50 million for agriculture. Subtracting these and the earmarked traditional infrastructure projects, such as the Tappan Zee Bridge and Penn Station rail improvement projects from the $3 billion infrastructure investment fund, leaves only $115 million for general infrastructure investment, which must be shared between roads, rails, airports, seaports, economic development, and though unnamed in the budget summary, presumably water and wastewater projects. Based upon the need for investment in wastewater infrastructure, the current funding gap, the higher than average return on investment for wastewater infrastructure, and the percentage of good-paying jobs created by wastewater investment, we believe that a specific line item for wastewater projects in the dedicated infrastructure investment fund is warranted, and an appropriate share of the $3 billion fund should be allocated specifically for a new Pure Waters program. In 1966, New York State led the nation in its efforts to restore its waterways and protect the public health through investment in wastewater infrastructure. The secondary effects of this investment were long-lasting increased economic development and employment opportunities. It is once again time for New York State to lead the way in wastewater infrastructure investment by creating a dedicated line item in the Infrastructure Investment Fund for wastewater projects. A new Pure Waters program will create a mechanism to restore New York State's wastewater infrastructure to minimal acceptable condition, safeguarding those investments for this and future generations while ensuring recreational opportunities, increasing economic development, and creating jobs. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak before you today. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the economic benefits of wastewater infrastructure investment or our position regarding a new Pure Waters program.
Thank you. Senator Krueger.
I just want to thank you as the final speaker today in reminding us that when government invests in our infrastructure, it is not only a win for all of us, but it is real economic development as well. So I appreciate your testimony.
It is. Thank you, Senator.
Ditto, and I agree with you entirely. We're separating too many things out for various projects, and we got to separate it out by various categories, like wastewater treatment, roads, bridges, or whatever, or else we'll never know what the standards are for picking and choosing what's going to get funded and whatnot. And one of those areas will get ignored. So thank you very much for testifying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
If your dream were to come true and this new program were to be created, what would be the appropriate sharing of the burden, the cost burden for a project be for a town X? Would the state fund 50%, town X funds the other 50%? What's the ideal?
My-
100%.
My goal in being here today was to make sure there were funds allocated, and should we get to that step, I would imagine we would come up with some fair allocation between the entire state. There's needs in New York City, there's needs upstate, out in the western part of the state, to come up with a better mechanism to applying those funds proportionately so that, you know, the state benefits as a whole rather than one specific region. So my goal today is to secure those funds first.
The town would be subject, of course, to the property tax cap for its property tax revenues, right?
Yes, as we are now. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll be back here tomorrow at 9:30 to start all over again.
Thank you.